Good evening, everyone, and welcome. This is the regular meeting of the Scarborough Town Council. Today is May 7th, 2025. I would like it if you would please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Jody, could you call the roll, please?
Yes, Counselor Cushing,
Here.
Counselor Shu,
Here.
Counselor Fellows,
Here.
Counselor Anderson,
Here.
Council Chair Scyther.
Here.
Thank you.
At this time, I will be turning over the podium to our Fire Chief, Chief Kindlin. If you could please join us.
Good evening, Scarborough Town Council and our entire Scarborough community. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. Many of you are already aware that your Scarborough Public Safety family, consisting of fire, rescue, PD, and dispatch, is grieving the loss of Fire and EMS Lieutenant Shannon Haley, 39 years old, who died on Friday, May 2nd, unexpectedly after a medical event while off duty. As you would suspect, this tragic news shook our public safety family to the core. As I share this unfortunate news, I'd like to focus not on her resume or what she did in the past, but more so on who she was. I'd like to focus on how Lieutenant Haley chose us. She chose the town of Scarborough as a community she would faithfully serve for over 16 years. She chose us over special family occasions, more holidays than we can count, and in her true character, she always prioritized the Scarborough Fire Department and the community needs over her own. One thing I'm certain of is her clinical expertise as one of the strongest and highly skilled paramedics in our department has lent to so many positive outcomes for patients and families in our community. If that wasn't enough, she was also a licensed registered nurse practicing on her off time. Lieutenant Haley was also a strong leader within our department. She had a firm yet empathetic leadership style. She served her crews in her charge with as much dedication and passion as she did the others in the community. Today, your fire department is heartbroken and hurting right now. I continue to be proud of all of our members who are joining us tonight, which is Shannon's shift. She would be working today if she was here today. I continue to be proud of all our members and the resilience they have shown as we navigate this tragic loss and honor Lieutenant Haley's service to the town of Scarborough. Like so many, I will personally miss Shannon terribly, especially her regular, "Hey, Chief Aroni," as she passed me in the station mornings when she was there. On behalf of the fire department, I want to thank the town council, our town senior staff, our mutual aid communities, and the entire Scarborough community for the outpouring of support they have shown over the past few days. It's truly a remarkable experience, the hundreds of condolences and offers to support us that have come in. Most remarkable was during Shannon's return procession to Scarborough the other day, when the entire community sent a strong message to our department and Lieutenant Haley's family, who were with us, about how much we love, honor, and will celebrate her. Thank you for keeping all of us in your thoughts as we prepare her final celebration of life this Saturday, May 10th at 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the landing at Pine Point. Once again, I thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Chief. At this time, I would like everyone to please join me in a moment of silence to honor Lieutenant Haley. Thank you all, and thank you for joining us this evening, Chief. This time, I will begin to carry out the rest of our agenda. Item number 4 on our agenda is general public comment. If there is anyone this evening wishing to make general public comment on something that is not on the agenda, now is the appropriate time to do so.
Good evening. I'm Susan Hamill, Bay Street in Pine Point. A couple of weeks ago, I attended a planning board meeting. And in the lead up to the meeting, as I looked at the agenda, I noticed that the planning board posted all the emails and letters that people were writing in on the various agenda items. And I very much appreciated having the ability to look at that material in advance of the meeting. It brought a lot of facts that I was unaware of to light. And it got me thinking that, very often people write in to the town council on issues that are coming before them on the agenda. And it would be great if you would consider posting those as you receive them to each of the various agenda items. I think it gave me a sense for how many is this overwhelmingly people are opposing something, or are they in favor of it? And I felt going into the meeting that I was more prepared with, to know how people were feeling. Anyway, I wish that it occurred to me that this was great. I appreciated it. And I would like you to please think about adopting the same practice. Thanks.
Thank you, Sue. Anyone else wishing to make general public comment this evening? Seeing none, I will close public comment. Item 5 is the minutes from our April 16th, 2025 Town Council meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? So that is unanimous. Thank you. Item 6 is adjustments to the agenda. One final time, I will be making a motion to move item 10, standing and special committee reports and liaison reports, to follow item 8 on our agenda this evening. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Excellent. Item 7 are treasurer's warrants. I took care of those before the meeting, and item 8 is our town manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try to move briskly through my items. With respect to the budget, this evening is your second and final reading. Just a quick little recap of process. Finance Committee held a total of 4 different meetings, the first 2 of which were really detailed review sessions. The third focused almost exclusively on capital investments. And then just most recently last week, they convened to decide on their final adjustments that will be brought for your consideration this evening. In addition, there were 3 different roundtables with varying success in terms of turnout, but nonetheless, I think it's important to provide for those opportunities, and staff was pleased to be part of that. And as I alluded to, the Finance Committee has agreed upon a set of recommended adjustments that it is customary for the Finance Chair to offer those as typically the first amendment to really get the budget in a different place based on their detailed review and advice. And I hope you'll consider that same process this evening. I've continually updated you on a number of construction projects. We're actually have some things to report now. The Black Point Road reconstruction project is in full swing. Very pleased, although we only had 1 bidder, that bidder is extremely confident. Shaw Brothers Construction, we're very confident in their bid as well because it was well within the engineer's estimates. So it's not as if we felt as though lack of competition, didn't provide competitive pricing. We're really pleased with that selection. So much so they appear to be certainly working toward our very aggressive schedule, if not slightly beating it. So very pleased to report that. We've stayed in very close contact with the Proustnet community, just given the amount of inconvenience during construction, but so far so good. Things are going as good as could be expected. With respect to the Eastern Trail project, we did open bids on April 24th. In that case, we had 6 bidders, a lot of really good competition. Coincidentally, the apparent low bidder is Shaw Brothers, and they're partnering with a bridge subcontractor. The challenge for us is really looking at our available finances. This is a complicated project involving local money, some from Scarborough, others from South Portland, local fundraising, and state and federal money, each requiring varying matches. And it's thankfully Angela and her team are helping me do some better understanding of how that all works. We'll be submitting a request to Maine Department of Transportation to reallocate some of the state and federal monies. And if that comes through, we're looking at a deficit of about $100,000. And I'll continue to work with partners to see if we can close that gap. I will just kind of forewarn, I may be in a position needing and wanting to come back to you and having a conversation around that. It's such a relatively small amount. This project has been 10 years in the works and it will never be closer than it is today. So I don't want to make that decision myself and simply turn away. If we find ourselves in a position of a final funding gap, we've already started to generate some ideas of how we can close that. But let me try my other sources first, but I'm very hopeful that we can get this awarded and under construction. Sailor Beach passes started May 1st. It was fast and furious. Kristen's still standing. But on that first day, they sold 207 non-resident passes and over 1,000 resident passes. It was very, very busy in town hall that day. And as of today, just to update you on those numbers, the non-resident passes are at 286, and that means there's 64 left. And resident passes are about 1,600 at this point. So history suggests that it's always very brisk in the first week or so, but it will be consistent through May and June, and certainly into the summer as well. The site selection process for the school solution continues. We're in a bit of a holding pattern, waiting for the committee to make, for the community to voice its opinion and for the committee to be in a position to really state their preferred solution. But at the same time, we're trying to run on parallel paths and keep a number of key sites available. The real critical piece that we're going through now is a vernal pool evaluation. Those results should be available by the end of this week, and they will be really determinant on which sites that we'll pursue. As things will pick up considerably in that regard, and that will certainly involve this council. For me, I'll need authorization to negotiate and start the process once we have a site selected. Pleased to mention that for the 20th consecutive year, the Scarborough Finance Department has received the GFOA award. This is for Certificate in Excellence of Financial Reporting. Norm and his team have kept that tradition alive and well, and very much appreciate those efforts. A few housekeeping things. Herd Park. We've been doing a series of upgrades at Herd Park and Pine Point. Earlier this week, we closed the lot so we could do just sweeping. And then what I want to make the public aware, and we're certainly publicizing this through social media and other means, that on between May 12th and 14th, the lot will be closed for seal coating and striping. And we'll certainly hope to knock that out in those 2 days, and we'll enjoy a good summer, but very pleased that we're able to advance those projects. Similarly, there's a large DOT project on Mitchell Hill Road. If you can picture at the foot of the hill, right at the Gorham line, they call it a bridge, I call it a culvert, but the Nonsuch River crosses at that point. They'll be replacing that bridge. That will require about a 45-day closure of Mitchell Hill Road. So there'll be detours. DOT is responsible for publicizing those, but we'll do our part to make residents aware of that. You can expect to see crews mobilized in late July on the site, and closure will happen in early August. And they're looking to wrap things up in October. So again, we'll do our part to publicize that further. Thank you for bearing with me. 2 final things. Things are happening very briskly in Augusta. There were some 2,000 bill titles submitted. The pace is something that I've never experienced. I think it's in part or in large part because they haven't limited the number of bills they'll consider, and they're really moving at breakneck pace. What that means for the rest of us, it's hard to keep up. Literally, they're printing bills the day that they're having public hearings. There was one such bill that came to our attention. I think the counselors have been made aware of it, so-called LD 1093. It started innocuous enough in it regards Scarborough Beach State Park. It was in the first rendition offered by Representative Sophie Warren of Scarborough was to simply differentiate between state parks and non-state parks. And then during committee, there was an amendment to allow any state park pass to be applicable and available for Scarborough Beach State Park, which has never been the case. And so there is, I think, genuine concern if that does happen, just for the traffic and congestion. That beach is certainly a finite resource, predominantly based on its parking. We could expect ramifications on Ferry Beach, given its proximity, and maybe other beaches. So this is something that I know we've been asked to weigh in. I do plan to communicate to the rest of our delegation about our concerns. I will say the only saving grace is that this would not take effect during the current contract period. So it would not take effect till 2029. So should it even pass, there's the potential in future years to perhaps undo things if they're problematic. And lastly, just looking forward to next week, there's a short-term rental, what do we call it, workshop meeting on Thursday, May 15th. I believe we've invited everyone in town that we believe has some sort of rental interest or property. So we could have several hundred people at this meeting, but our intent is really to make sure they're aware that we're having this conversation. The meeting will be held at 5 o'clock at the Public Safety Building, again on Thursday, May 15th. And lastly, just for your next meeting on May 21, there is no workshop, but I do anticipate having a poverty or hardship tax abatement hearing. And at this point, we're starting it at 6, but there'll be more details to follow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. Does anyone have any questions for the town manager? Nope. Okay.
Thank you.
At this point, we will take up item 10, standing and special committee reports and liaison reports. I believe last meeting, John started down there, so I will start down here.
I don't think I have anything because we've been mostly doing budget related work for finance committee. So I'll just save my comments for when we get to the budget.
Okay, thank you. Corey?
Thank you. The planning board met on April 22nd. It was a very full agenda. They were here for almost 5 hours, I think, 5 or 6 hours. One of the items that they heard, which took up quite a bit of time, was public comment and discussion around the Marshview contract zone proposal, which we'll be discussing later on this evening, obviously. There are a couple of projects in the Downs that were discussed, and a very full slate. Long Range Planning Committee meets this Friday morning at 8 o'clock. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Tom did a great job covering the school building advisory committee. The only thing I will say is that we do have our last survey out right now. And so if you have not taken the opportunity to take the survey is available online until May 12th. And it is also available by paper copy until May 9th. And I know that the committee would really appreciate as many people filling out that survey as is possible. Karen.
Sure, thank you. The Conservation Commission met yesterday and they're working on one of our goals, which is to become a tree city. And so I think the first step that Autumn went over with them is to create a tree ordinance. So they've looked at the first draft of that. The Parks and Conservation Land Board meets tomorrow. And they are integrating the open space plan into their evaluation tool. And that's the evaluation tool that they use when people apply for the land bond money. The Community Services Advisory Board is meeting this tomorrow evening, and they are working on programming. So this is kind of the committee that you would go to if you live in town and you're like, how come we don't have this program? This would probably be the committee that you would want to go to and say, hey, can we maybe have this program in town? And then lastly, the ordinance committee is meeting next week. We're still getting together an agenda, but I think we're going to be taking up the animal control ordinance, a temporary sign ordinance, and then maybe amending the Running Hill zone to add landscaping as a use. And that's what I got.
Great, thank you. Councilor Cushing.
Hi, the Communication Committee did meet Perhaps the most important item on our agenda was the loss of the print version of the Scarborough Leader. We heard updates from Liam on conversations with people from the Maine Trust for, I forget the name of it, but the group that owns the Press Herald, basically all of the main newspapers. And there really were no significant outcomes other than the fact that I think we all agree this community has suffered a significant loss in the communications department. And this community will have to make judgments as to how it replaces those with something that is equivalent. Of course, you can still read the newspaper in the electronic version if you can find it. So I think that's going to be an ongoing problem that I hope the town will continue to address. The Communications Committee also has a vacancy, which they won't need to be filling sometime between now and the next meeting. So good luck with that. Thanks.
Thank you, Don. Scott?
Yeah, there's not much going on this month, so I think they've canceled the Harper meeting for Tuesday. I just would like to say, on the Harper meeting, commission and I'm pretty put out with it. My mooring fee was $50 and now it's $1,000. And, at first it was the talk of it was a pier fee. And now they don't talk about that. They just say it's a mooring fee to cover that so that I don't have an argument, I guess. But the back shore, Ferry Beach, we've always just done our own thing. We put our own money into the float. Didn't ask down for any money, no tax money from the taxpayers. For me to put a mooring block in the river, there's no expense to the taxpayers for me to have more in the river. The town has always has backed up commercial fishermen and supported them. What it boils down to is, I've gone through it, but to let everybody know, they decided at the Harper meeting to just charge a fee for, mostly it's the pier use. The town invested a bunch of money in the Pine Point Pier. I fish at a Ferry Beach. I don't use the pier. I don't go over there. I don't put any traps on the float. I don't put any bait on the float. It all goes from Ferry Beach. And I've tried to, get people to see that. Darren, the harbor master, every time I see him, he comes to me and he's got another fee for me. I think, it looks to me like the more I complain, the more fees I get. So this will really cost me some money. But, every time, and I spoke out about him, the taxpayers' money, of course, I want to save money and cut spending, and having a full-time harbor master, I don't think we need it. It should be a part-time probably. I just think, so again, I'm just put out with it. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. At this time, I will move on to our agenda. The first item on our agenda this evening is Proclamation 25-002, Act on the request to recognize the second week in May as Lung Cancer Action Week. This came to us from a resident, but also is being sponsored by Councillor Anderson this evening. If there's anyone wishing to make public comment on this, they are welcome to do so. Go for it. Thank you, Peggy.
Thank you to the town council and to Councillor Anderson for reading this and for recognizing the importance of Lung Cancer Action Week and what we can do about it. And to Don Cushing, who had been a former chair of the Lung Association in Maine. So thank you all.
With that, I will go ahead and allow Councillor Anderson to read the proclamation, please.
Right. Be it resolved by the Council of the Town of Scarborough, Maine, and Town Council assembled that whereas the American Lung Association Lung Force Initiative has been working to ensure that fewer people are diagnosed with lung cancer and those living with the disease live longer since 2014 in the town of Scarborough. And whereas lung cancer is the leading cause of cancer deaths, and whereas lung cancer screening saves lives and advocacy and increased awareness will result in more high-risk individuals getting screened. And whereas public support for research funding will result in new treatments and better methods of early detection. And whereas Lung Force is a national initiative led by the American Lung Association to defeat lung cancer. Be it resolved that the town of Scarborough hereby designates the second week in May as Lung Cancer Action Week throughout the town of Scarborough, encourages all residents of Scarborough to learn more about lung cancer, risk factors, and early detection and take action. Signed and sealed the 7th day of May 2025 on behalf of the Scarborough Town Council and the Town Manager of Scarborough, Maine.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Any discussion? Yes, Councillor Cushing.
So a couple of things. So thank you for mentioning that I was president of the Maine Lung Association for a year and served on the board for a number of years. During the time, the major thing we accomplished during that time was to get smoking out of bars and restaurants, which back in the 90s, seems like a long time ago, was fairly controversial and hard fought. Some of you who are familiar with the Lung Association may know that it was originally the Tuberculosis Association. And so as we are focusing on lung cancer today, I want to, so just so you know, this isn't just gratuitous and patting myself in the head. My real reason for even mentioning this today is to read this. A significant tuberculosis outbreak, one of the largest in US history, is currently underway in Kansas. As of January 25, there were 67 confirmed active cases and 79 latent cases in 2 counties near Kansas City. This outbreak has resulted in 2 deaths. While the risk to general public is considered low, public health officials are taking steps to ensure patients receive proper treatment and further care. This comes on the heels of a measles epidemic. I imagine mumps and smallpox won't be far behind. My point in mentioning this to you today is to say that public health in this country, as we speak, is under assault. And it is something that will affect every single one of us. We have voted by our own Susan Collins, a virtual idiot running the Department of Health and Human Services, who diminishes the great reputation of the Kennedy name and legacy. And all of you need to focus on making sure that your voices are heard on this issue and all of the issues that are affecting us on a day-to-day basis. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to make this little public health speech.
Thank you, Councillor Cushing. Councillor Anderson.
Yeah. I just would like to thank Peggy for bringing this forward to the council for consideration. My grandmother, who I never got the chance to meet, died of lung cancer at the young age of 57 years old. And so this to me is personal. And so thank you very much for bringing something like this forward so that we can honor all the families that struggle with lung cancer.
Thank you very much. With that, I will call the vote. All those in favor? Show that as unanimous. Thank you. Order number 25-034 is a 7 p.m. public hearing and second reading on the proposed amendments to Chapter 405 zoning ordinance, Section 11, off-street parking regulations to amend electric vehicle charging systems requirements. Thank you, Autumn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was an item that was before you all on April 2nd at first reading. Since then, it has gone to the planning board and we actually had an opportunity to put it into play for a site plan review. There is a small amendment that staff requested the planning board consider to remove the distance requirements for EVC as shared spaces. It would allow the planning board to have discretion over that if that was requested. They did unanimously recommend approving it as written with that amendment, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Autumn. Does anyone have any questions for Autumn? Great, thank you. At this time, I will open this item for public comment. Seeing none, I will close public comment. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Counselor Cushing?
There have been people who have said that, Madam Chair, that they value my perspective, and I just want to make sure they can kind of get shortchanged.
Absolutely. Give the people what they are asking.
But what I'm going to spare you tonight was the full-blown picture of the flaming Tesla that is sitting out in front of somebody's store that has a parking lot that the town of Scarborough required them to have an EV charging station. It seems perfectly appropriate to me that when a business owner decides that market forces suggest that having an EV charging station would benefit him, her, and the business, then they should put one there. And the town of Scarborough then is clearly should set standards, make sure they're safe and so forth. But my question would be, well, I still drive an old gas guzzling truck and I have to go to a gas station. I can't just park and, grab a nozzle and stick it there. So my recommendation to this council is that you amend this so that it eliminates the requirement that businesses put these charging stations in and restricts the town's activity to this, to only requiring things that are absolutely necessary and letting the market take care of the rest of it. So to my mind, that particular ordinance is overreach. If the federal government decides they would like to, put that kind of thing in for the whole country, then Scarborough should follow along. But it strikes me that all it really does is add to cost for citizens in town. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Cushing. Other council comments? Councilor Fellows?
Thank you. I don't have any issues with this, as was discussed last time. This is a modification of an ordinance that's already been in place. It was responsive to developer and landowner feedback based on some of the realities on the ground. Good faith folks can debate whether or not something is government overreach. I think it's a good opportunity for Scarborough to be in a little bit of a leadership position on something. And I'm certainly not holding my breath for this federal government to fill that void. So I will support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Other councilor comment? Councilor Anderson, thank you.
Yeah, I would like to motion that we amend the main motion to include the planning board recommendation to remove the 300-foot distance requirements for shared EVS parking.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion on the planning board's recommendation? No? All those in favor of the amendment? All those opposed? Thank you. Okay, the amendment passes. Returning to the main motion as amended. Any further discussion? Councilor Anderson?
Yeah, no, to both counselors' points that were made, this is essentially a slight deregulation that is taken to consider market feedback. So I think this is maybe a good first step. Since we're not talking about full repeal at this time, I think this is the right thing to move the conversation forward. And I know when you are at the forefront and leading, you learn. I think marijuana has been a great example where the state has been, at the forefront, and a lot of communities are learning, and we've had to learn a lot through that process as well. And things will continue to evolve the more we know and the more the market changes. So I'm going to support this tonight.
Thank you. Other councilor comment?
Just one more thing. I am going to support this because it's an adjustment to an ordinance that is already there, and I have no problem improving things even when they shouldn't be there in the first place.
Thank you, sir. Just to piggyback on what Councilor Anderson said, we were one of the first municipalities to have this ordinance, and this is in direct response to something that we hear from our residents quite frequently, which is, why didn't you plan for this? And so while this ordinance is certainly probably going to go through many iterations as we figure out exactly what the market demands are and what the construction implications are going to be, I also will be supporting this evening because I feel like this is a very responsive ordinance that helps us plan for the future. So with that, I will go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you very much. Next on our agenda this evening is order number 25-040, 7 PM public hearing and second reading on the proposed amendments to chapter 302, the Town Council Rules and Policies Manual. This is coming to us from Rules and Policy. Again.
All right, not much more to say on this.
Thanks,
Hopefully
Corey.
tonight was the last time you have to adjust the agenda. This would both move the standing reports on committees and boards and liaison roles up to the front of the meeting, toward the front of the meeting after the town manager's report for greater public visibility. And then there also is an element of this that would modify the submission deadline for materials to conform with the 4-day business week of the town.
Perfect. Is there anyone wishing to make public comment on this item? Seeing none, I will close public comment. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Council discussion. I will just say thank you very much to the committee for putting these two things forward. They are very timely, and I look forward to the changes to our agenda. I think that they will benefit the public greatly. With that, I will go ahead and call the vote. All those in favor? Show that as unanimous. Thank you. Item number 25-043 is a 7 PM public hearing and action on the new request for a food handler's license from Timothy Morris, doing business as Morris Family Farm located at 18 Aslan Drive. This is coming to us from the town clerk.
Thank you. This is a new home business. Due to its location, the business did have to apply and received a zoning variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals. The license is all set in compliance with the clerk's office.
Thank you very much, Kristen. Is there anyone wishing to make public comment? Seeing none, I will close public comment. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Council discussion? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor? Show that as unanimous. Thank you. Order number 25-044 is a 7 PM public hearing and action on the new request for an innkeeper's license from Diana Cafone, doing business as the Downeaster Motel located at 184 US Route 1. Kristen?
Thank you. This is an established business. However, there is a new owner. Since licenses are non-transferable, this is why it's in front of you tonight.
Excellent. Thank you. Is there anyone wishing to make public comment on this? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any council discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Show that as unanimous. Thank you. Order number 25-045 is a 7 PM public hearing and action on the new request for a combined massage establishment therapist license from Nicole Colby, doing business as Open Palm Wellness located at 383 US Route 1, and for a massage therapist license for James Lascars, sorry about that, working at Open Palm Wellness. Kristen.
This is a new business to Scarborough, as well as 2 new massage therapists. And this is in compliance with the town clerk's office for the application.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to make public comment on this item? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Council discussion? Call the vote. All those in favor? Excellent. Show that as unanimous. Thank you. Order number 25-046 is a 7 PM public hearing and action on the new request for a combined massage establishment therapist license for Yan Huang Zhang, doing business as Scarborough Therapy located at 605 US Route 1. Kristen.
Thank you. This is also a business, new massage therapy business, and massage therapist in Scarborough. There was a transfer of ownership that took place a while back, and this is bringing them in compliance now with the ordinance and having new licensure.
Thank you. Is there anyone wishing to make public comment on this item? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any council discussion? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor? Show that as unanimous. Thank you. Okay, moving on to old business. Order number 25-033. Second reading on the proposed FY 2026 municipal and school budget. I believe we are going to have Counselor Anderson tee this up for us.
Yep, so,
Thank you, sir.
I want to thank the Finance Committee and all the residents who participated in the budget process this year. So we started this in late March, when the superintendent and town manager presented their budgets. And then we worked as a committee to make refinements and recommendations, as well as deal with some items that were in motion that ultimately impacted the budget. And so I'm excited to share some of the amendments that we'll be providing tonight with the council for consideration to hopefully move this budget forward.
Excellent. Thank you, John. Is there anyone in the public wishing to make public comment? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Council discussion.
Yep, I would like to amend the budget order to include the amendments that are recommended from the Finance Committee in the packet. I don't know, Kristen, if you can pull that up, and perhaps the budget scorecard, which might be easier to talk to in terms of some of the adjustments that are being made. Yeah, that one. So should I explain this before getting a second, or?
Yeah, why don't you walk us through what is being amended, John? Thank
Yep.
you.
So this sheet, which is in the packet for the public, if anybody's interested in kind of digging into it, I'll just hit some of the high notes. So as we work through the budget process on the school side, one of the challenges that's happening during this time period is they're getting enrollments for kindergarten students, and that impacts the need for special services. And so there's some adjustments made because there were more students that enrolled post our first reading that required special services. So that's an adjustment that had to be made. Additionally, both on the town and school side, there have been some adjustments to medical insurance rates and things like that that are also in motion. On the school side, because of challenges with the state in terms of grant funding, there's a pre-K pilot that's in place right now. And so the school elected to use reserves. So there's a increase in cost, but an offsetting revenue there. That's keeping it essentially budget neutral. As well as when they're getting, enrollment, there's a out of district placement that they have to do that again creates an increase. So for those in the public, for awareness, when there's some students that we can't provide the services for, so we're mandated by the state to provide tuition for them to go to another school that has those services. And so that's an example of something where we're mandated by law to fund that for that particular, or for the student in need. Again, there were some reductions in some of their CIP items as well, to try and bring some room for some of these additions that they had in that were to be appropriated, or they're just deferring them. So again, the school, I think, kept to what they committed to do at the beginning of the process, which was to really focus on level services or state required services. And a lot of these numbers reflect that. On the town side, one of the big areas of investment that we debated and recommended adding into the budget were 8 new firefighters that essentially allow a third ambulance to operate within Scarborough. So there was a pilot this past year where the fire department was able to trial that, and it was a really good experience. And again, it's been 20 years since we've added a second ambulance, and everybody knows our community has grown and we're so geographically distributed. We felt strongly that now is probably the time to make this investment and the staff so that we can enable that third ambulance. On the police side, again, trying to make sure that there's adequate shift coverage. And so the recommendation was to add 4 new police officers and 1 new dispatcher. And both departments did a lot to adjust their budgets in order to accommodate both of these requests. So the police worked hard to look in their operating budget to find some savings or to push things through. On the fire side, again, there's additional revenues that come in that offset things, as well as reductions in part-time wages. So again, the goal was to try and enable these services, but try and make sure that we look at the operating budget a little bit harder so that the net impact on taxpayers wouldn't be too high. A couple of other investments that are in here for consideration is a Metro pilot project. And so we recently had a workshop where Metro came and discussed potentially doing a pilot in Scarborough for mass transit. And so this is really a placeholder to enable that if the council elects to do so in 2026, hoping that there would be offsetting matching revenue by the private sector to help cover any pilot that may occur. And I think those are kind of the big ticket items. Again, some general deferments that staff had made and their recommendations. But I think the big pieces are on the town side is really trying to enable public safety to provide the best services that they can to our residents, which we felt was super important. Oh, yeah. And then there were 2 capital item adjustments that we made based on feedback that we got from many residents. One is to move the pickleball courts from 27 to 26. So this was originally last year in the 26 budget, and it, you know, as we have new staff and they're trying to make sure that these budgets reflect the needs of the community, we felt like that was something that many residents have asked for. And then lights at Peterson Field, the Little League team and a lot of parents who care about that in Scarborough approached us. And so we obliged and said, let's add it into the capital budget. And so that has no impact on the tax rate for this year because those are going to be bonded items. So as those get expensed in the future, you know, that would impact the future debt expense. But again, we typically try and keep that pretty level year over year. And so hopefully wouldn't have like a super big impact on future tax rates. And again, the thought for some of these investments like Metro, these is really trying to build that sense of community within our community. These are things that, you know, many families or residents could benefit from. And so we thought that these are good investments for our community, which is why we put some of them forward. I don't know if the finance committee members have anything else they would like to add or that I missed that you'd like to cover? No?
So with that, thank you very much for explaining the sheet for us. You do an excellent job making the budget accessible. You still need a second on your amendment. Okay, Karen seconds, perfect. So at this point, if there's any council discussion on the amendment, we could take that now. The only thing that I will add, again, John, I really commend you every year just for making the budget so accessible for our residents and really taking the time to make sure that people understand the critical investments that we're making and the rationale behind those decisions. I know that the Finance Committee spent a significant amount of time with our department heads, which is also a critical piece of our decision-making at this level. And so I'm just really grateful and appreciative to the 3 of you for doing that work and bringing forward something that is hopefully really representative of the values that our community is looking for. The only other thing I will add is that the Scarborough Little League did offer a $50,000 match for the funds that we have added to the budget. And so I just also want to give them a shout out and appreciate their request came with an offer to match that money. Other council discussion on the amendment? Yeah, Councilor Fellows.
Yeah, I was going to make the comment about Little League offering to chip in, and they really, as an organization, have always and continue to put in a lot of sweat equity, literally and figuratively, in terms of the upkeep of their facilities. It's a very dynamic program. I think it's a great example of, you know, what John was talking about in terms of community. So I also would just add my thanks to everyone on the Finance Committee. You know, as a first timer here on the council, I've been really impressed with how efficiently it's gone through this cycle. Thank you.
Other council comments? Okay, at this time, I will call a vote on the amendment. All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you very much. And now we return to the main motion as amended. Is there any additional council comment? Yes, Counselor Anderson.
Yeah, I just want to add, as Counselor Scyther said, budget is a series of choices, a series of things that we do our best to represent everybody in the community. So we know that there are people who have concerns about spending. And generally, this year at the very beginning, this was a very level services budget that very much focused on contractual requirements for our staff based on collective bargaining agreements that we made last year that we have to honor this year. The school was actively negotiating their collective bargaining agreement for teachers, which is the biggest line item in our budget and the biggest thing that our residents pay for. And so, most of what's included this year is really to honor those contractual commitments to pay our staff the wages and the insurance and all of those things that come along with it. We always see through our surveys how much people rate how much they appreciate all of the services, especially the people that are provided by our town. And so this budget is really to maintain those services to the best extent possible, while also adding some things in. The one thing that's a relatively big add-in that is required as well from the state and from the federal government is to ensure that we give equal opportunity to all students. And so there's 11 or 12 now ed tech teachers being added that are required by law to provide equal education to those students. And so, there's not much in here, I think. And every time I go through the budget cycle, I'm always impressed by both the school and the town with how thoughtful they are with making sure that the things we're asking for are truly needs. I think this year, the finance committee probably delved a little bit more into wants and things that we felt like are important. You could debate whether having a third ambulance is necessary or not, but for the health and safety of our residents, I personally felt like this is probably the time to make that investment. All in all, this is the projected mill rate increase would be 3.75%. We won't know for certain what the actual mill rate will be until August, but we know based on data and history, we tend to take a conservative approach because it really, the big factors that drive those, the assessor won't know for certain. And so he's always, taken a conservative approach so that we don't go the other direction where, the mill rate goes up. And so I'm confident that what residents will likely see come August when we go to do taxes will be below the 3.75%. So yeah, I just want to again thank everybody the finance committee and staff for answering all of our questions, coming to all of our meetings, helping us understand, the important things to continue to provide great service to our community. And, I hope everybody out there in town just knows that when we do this, we really are trying to think about everybody. It's hard to do that because everybody has different opinions, and that's great because that diversity, I think, is a strength for our community. And this is, us trying to do our best to consider all of that and bring something that hopefully our residents will support.
Great. Thank you very much, Sean. I will also just put out one final pitch for people to vote. Once we have our vote here, that the job is not done. We are relying on our community and our residents to turn out the vote. And so this year, the vote will take place on Tuesday, June 10th, 2025. We also have absentee voting available and early voting available for those who take advantage of those services. And so please, please, please go vote. Yes. And with that, I will, yes, Counselor Cushing, jumping in.
You're going to get your money's worth.
No worries.
So I think I'm not going to repeat a lot of the things, the very true things that Counselor Anderson said. I'm assuming all of everything I have in here is public information. And I think, I believe it was Karen said at one of the meetings we were at some time ago that, people don't know a lot of things, but they know what their tax rate is. And that when you talk about percentages and so forth, people really, that doesn't make, what is that number? And so going all the way back to Counselor Hamel, who would ask that question, what is that number? And our tax assessor, who happens to have a good grasp of statistics and trends and so forth. The issue is, well, if we know what the new value was and we know what the old value was, then we can figure out the mill rate. But the new value is always an estimate right up until the end of it. And the trick is to not raise people's expectations. But if you look at things statistically, you can make a reasonable estimate. And if I understand it, the assessor, because he likes his job and his current position as being very popular in the town, works hard to be very conservative in his estimates. So this budget is responsible coming in at an estimated 41 cents in the mill rate, which when I take that and multiply it times average, home values, it seems that it's reasonable. It's also important to point out that we got some history. That in 2021, I didn't do all the math, so I'm going to have to work in percentages here. The budget went up 1.9%. In 2022, it went up 1.8%. In 2023, 2.4%. Higher in 24, 3.7%. And so when I look back historically, not being involved in a lot of that, I think that there is a fair trend towards developing responsible budgets that meet the needs of the town. And the last point I want to make is that one of the things that guided me in my thinking was looking at choices that really have broad benefit. And we've been in a position now, because we have really excellent leadership and excellent teams in our school department and our fire department and in our police department, that we're in a good position to get people who are hard to get. And so rather than wait, it made sense to me, and I think to others, to say, if we're in a good position to get good people, we should get them, because those people serve all of us, regardless of your age or your station or your location. And that is one of the things that the citizens have said over and over again, is that we value the basic services that the town provides, and we think you're doing a pretty good job. So it makes sense not to let that erode. And so, to my mind, this is a responsible budget. But the caution is that you sit back and say, well, okay, we can tolerate 3% a year. Let's just keep doing this. No, we should really come into it every single year, looking at things that can be eliminated, changed, more efficient. And in my view, when we speak about investments, they're different from expenses. Investments have a return. I believe we bought some software for the finance department, which I view as an investment, because in fact, it will help the people that are in there now do their jobs faster, better, quicker. Those types of things I think we need to continue to work on, because they are the kinds of things that keep this tax rate down. And one final point for all of you growth haters, I know we're going to get into that in a minute, but one of the reasons that we are able to keep this tax rate down is we do have growth, unlike other communities. It's not necessary that we spend it all. We're never going to stop it. And I think that we need to work at channeling that growth and doing it responsibly. That's a hard thing. There are tough choices involved, but the alternative is to just build a wall. And we all know how that works. Okay, end of speech. And by the way, this is your punishment for having me sit on that finance committee all this time.
Thank you, Councilor Cushing. Yeah, Scott, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a statement that the concept of schools is to give everybody, no matter their income, an equal chance for kids. And we do. This community has a lot of people, hardworking people, that have given as a gift to the kids of our community for many years now, working hard, millions and millions of dollars to make sure they have an education. But there comes a line where, it's just excessive. It's the stuff that we're building, like making a proposal for $160 million school for K through 2. You know, people are saying no to that. You know, the school budget we have now in the buildings, the capital investment into buildings. I think that the middle school should have an addition on it to take care of the expansions in the 3 other schools, the K through 2, and maybe even put some of second graders in that expansion. And then the portables that are there, they can be an expansion for that school. I think that the people would probably vote for that. But the proposals that you have up now, I mean, Tom told me when I first got here that I don't understand. There's going to be a new school. Well, I mean, maybe there will be, but it's up to the people to say. And I don't, you know, I would say no. You know, we don't need a new school, and you keep hammering a new school. And I think we should just fix up the ones that we have, and there's room there to do it. And that's it. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other council comments? Yes, sir.
That this budget doesn't include the new school cost, that will be a separate thing that may be on the ballot as early as November, so that Scott is not in this. I know, just wanted to clarify for the number.
Thank you. That's important. With that, I will go ahead and call the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you very much. Moving on in our agenda to new business. Order number 25-047 is first reading to consider the proposed contract zone for the South Portland Housing Development Corporation for the development of multifamily housing located at 578 US Route 1, Assessors Map U034, Lot 1. And Autumn will be teeing this up, and I believe we'll also be hearing from the applicant before I turn it over for public comment.
Yes, excuse me. Thank you. This came before you all in December as a joint public meeting with the planning board. This is a contract zone, so it has a specific process that it goes through, and that's the first step. The applicants further defined the contract zone request, and they did go to planning board on April 22nd for a site plan review, a preliminary site plan review. The contract zone request, I'll just give you the high points. I don't want to take all of it from the applicant, but the contract zone request is essentially to consolidate the zoning into one TVC3. This is for 60 affordable units for 55 and older, and then 36 workforce units, townhouse units. They've also asked for a reduction in the front setback. That was actually a request from staff. There are wetlands in the rear portion of the property, and we recommended adding a reduced front setback, and they've asked for that. And there is also a request for removing the building footprint exceeding 10,000 square foot requirement. They've also asked to remove the height limitation of 45 feet, but limiting the height to 44 stories, which would be around 47 feet. So essentially the same. The planning board held a very lengthy public hearing. We received quite a bit of comments. I believe you all have been privy to many comments that have been coming forward the last month as well. There were several concerns and items in your packet were the planning board findings. The planning board did not take action on the preliminary site plan that is required for the contract zone process. So if this moves forward, it would need to go back to the planning board for that review. Some of the comments that came up at planning board that were they were considering really have to do with the contract zone request. So it's more in the realm of this body to decide the height, the zoning, those things are really up to the council and the contract zone process. And then the site plan standards that relate to traffic specifically or in the purview of the site plan review. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And I think the applicant has a PowerPoint that they'd like to share with you.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the applicant if you guys are prepared. Thank you so much and welcome.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, council. Thank you, public, for being here. And the city staff, the town staff that's helped us through this process. My name is Benjamin Money. I'm a development officer for South Portland Housing Authority and the Development Corp. I think if you could run to the next slide. Yep, so here's just a little slide about us. As an organization, it's probably very familiar for the town council at this point, but for the members of the public. The Housing Authority and the Development Corp is a 501c3 nonprofit. The mission of that organization is to develop, own, operate a honest, safe, respectable housing. In that mission, we service South Portland, Scarborough. We've assisted in developments through southern Maine, as far as Biddeford. Currently, we own and operate 795 properties, certain housing units. We currently have 95 under construction. Some of the ones you guys are most familiar with is Jocelyn Place. That is a 60-unit housing for seniors 55 and up. Very similar to one of the buildings we're proposing in this contract zone. That is in Scarborough on Little Dolphin Drive. It's an excellent facility. I encourage anyone who's interested in learning and seeing what those look like to go drive by and take a look. It's a beautiful facility. So that's a little bit about us. I do want to touch on just a little bit about this project before I pass it off to our engineers. And yeah, we'll ignore the slide for now, but just a little bit. I just want to say that this project, we've been working on it for well over a year and a half now. There's been dozens of professionals working on this in conjunction with public comment, the partnership with the town staff, the planning board comments, the council's comments. I just want to make it clear that this has been a collaborative effort with everybody in this community. We've taken several phone calls, emails. We are an open door to the public and everyone here. And at that, I'll pass it off to Sam LaBelle at Acorn Engineering. He'll talk a bit about the site. I'll come back up and talk about the contract zone and things a little bit later as well.
Great, thank you, Ben. Members of the council, my name is Sam LaBelle with Acorn Engineering. It's good to be back in front of you. It was been about 5 months since we had the joint meeting with the council and the planning board just before the holidays. So since some time has passed, as well as the holidays, I thought it would be good to just give a quick refresh on some of the site program and existing conditions, just to put, what this contract zone entails into context. So the slide up in front of you shows an aerial image of the site as it sits today. I'm sure, as most of you are aware, it's operated as a flea market for quite some time. You've got the Payne Road intersection just to the south at the bottom left-hand side of the screen. And the red line represents the 7.9 acre parcel with, the front third, roughly a third, being in an existing developed state with a large parking area and of course an existing building. At the top of the screen, you've got Doloff Way, which is actually a private road leading to a Maine Department of Transportation storage facility. And then the rear of the site, as you can see, is largely wooded. There's a number of wetlands and an unnamed stream that runs to Phillips Brook in the marsh system. Next slide, please. So using kind of this same frame, we've overlaid the proposed site plan over the aerial image. As you can see, the approach to laying out this site development is very similar to what you saw 5 months ago. We have taken several iterations to improve the project, but the strategy has really been to keep the development towards the front of the site near Route 1, where it's currently developed. Our total impervious area is just over 2 acres versus the 8-acre parcel in total. So, a little bit over a quarter of that represents that developed impervious area. We've taken great care to really respect the stream setback, that blue dashed line that you can see towards the bottom right in the rear. There's also wetlands of special significance that buffer the stream. None of those wetlands are being touched or disturbed. That was really the priority in providing the site layout and what you see on the screen. There will be some wetland impacts, but they tend to be the smaller, more isolated and low value wetlands that are closer to Route 1. They really don't support the level of habitat that your larger, more contiguous wetlands
are able to provide. And in, the case being with the wetlands that are being protected. In addition to kind of that overview on the natural resources, we took extreme care in our stormwater management for this parcel. So, presently there is no stormwater management on site. The majority of the site drains to the rear. This project would trigger a main DEP permit, which is underway. It requires a certain level of treatment. We are far, far exceeding what the state is requiring for treatment. So we've been able to go above and beyond nearly 3 times the treatment level, which is filtering and cooling the stormwater through techniques such as soil filters and rain gardens. We're also able to slow down the stormwater. So what that does is it reduces the peak rates and actually helps reduce erosion in some of the downstream channels and drainage ways. So overall, very pleased to be able to significantly improve the situation with regards to stormwater runoff, which ultimately does flow to Phillips Brook and of course the marsh system. Next slide, please. And so zooming in one frame, kind of, just another level of detail on the actual site design. I'll quickly run you through. So, we are proposing to take the 3 existing curb cuts that service the site, reduce that down to 1. You can see that coming in off of Route 1. The 4-story, 60-unit senior affordable housing building anchors the site at the top left, the L shape that you can see. Inside the L, we have designed a community space. There's a rain garden, raised beds, benches, just an opportunity to kind of create that sense of place and community. It's got great southern orientation and really just a good spot to incorporate that placemaking opportunity. Otherwise, you can see the circulation and the parking is pretty straightforward. The smaller yellow boxes each represent a 12-unit workforce housing unit. Again, so not at the level of affordable, but still under the 120% AMI that I'm sure Ben will speak to, that really targets the missing middle. Around the site and throughout, you can see we are proposing to incorporate a robust landscaping program. We have a schedule of plantings, and it's literally in the hundreds, varying from grasses all the way to shade trees and evergreens that will help buffer. The other thing I wanted to point out is it's a bit hard to see, but the existing aerial, you can pick out the existing building just above the driveway. And so, we talked about earlier how we are pulling the development footprint closer to Route 1, but I think it's also important to note that the development footprint is also receding from Route 1. So, we're really tightening things in as much as possible. The existing flea market building, you can see the overlap is about 20 feet closer to Route 1 in that bottom left-hand corner. So trying to take everything into account and site the building and the infrastructure as well as possible. As Ben said, the site plan you're seeing tonight is the result of many iterations of site planning, due diligence, evaluation of the pro forma, and collaboration with professionals, including town staff and their peer reviewers. We've really worked hard to find the balance of a low-impact development, but also housing production. And so what you're seeing tonight is the result of that effort. This contract zone really is to kind of clean up the zones, as Autumn alluded to. We're in the town village center, which is of course a growth zone. And so, some of the variances that were spoken to are minor in nature. The bigger ticket items such as height and density, what we're proposing is actually allowed by right within those existing TVC zones. So we feel like what we're asking for is a modest request and really results in a win-win, both for the end users of these new homes, as well as the town of Scarborough. The project is consistent with the comprehensive plan in that it prevents sprawl by developing in proximity to existing infrastructure as well as goods and services. And most importantly, the project proposes to redevelop this non-conforming entire site into affordable and workforce housing. So very pleased to be able to present this project to you tonight and to continue to work through the site plan process, both with staff and the board. I'll now hand it off to Tom Errico from TY Lin to go over the traffic component of this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Good evening, members of the council. I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of traffic, the traffic assessment we performed as part of this project. The slide that's before you now just presents the existing condition. There are currently, as Ben noted, there are 3 existing driveways servicing the current site, 2 relatively wide curb cuts on Route 1, and then a sort of informal driveway off of Dolph Way. Currently, there's a median that exists now that restricts movements in that area. And so on the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of what we're proposing for improvements along the corridor, and specifically what went into our traffic evaluation as part of the project. Really, there were 2 components that we investigated as part of the traffic assessment: how much traffic a development of this size would generate. And in this case, it would generate about 30 AM peak hour trips and about 32 PM peak hour trips. That's a relatively low number of trips associated with a development, way below the threshold for a Maine DOT traffic movement permit. And when you think of the amount of traffic on Route 1 in this area, there's about 25,000 cars a day on Route 1. That represents less than 1% increase in traffic. So a really low generating use in terms of adding traffic to the system. We've worked very closely with town staff and Bill Bray, the town's third-party traffic consultant, evaluating the things that they were concerned about. And it really stemmed to 2 sort of things: access to Route 1, and then generally safety conditions at the Payne Road Route 1 intersection. And so fundamentally, what we're proposing, and we're sort of held to it, is that movements coming in and out of a single driveway. So we reduced the number of curb cuts on Route 1 to 1, a single curb cut, and those movements are restricted to right in, right out. Those types of access management improvements are really desired in terms of sort of minimizing conflict points on a very busy arterial. So we're really providing a very safe access condition. Through that communication and work with town staff, we shifted the driveway to the south. There were some concerns about vehicles exiting the site and trying to get around the raised island. And so as part of the design development, we've shifted the driveway to the south, and we're proposing to extend the median island to the north to discourage those types of movements. Some other improvements that we're proposing: a sidewalk along the frontage that would connect to the Payne Road traffic signal that would make it a very walkable development. Anytime you can provide opportunities for people to walk on foot, access other land uses nearby, access the bus stop nearby, we think serves transportation conditions well. We're proposing improvements to the pedestrian signals at the Payne Road Route 1 intersection, and then signage associated with the right turn restriction. And then lastly, we're proposing some striping modifications at the Payne Road intersection, where when we looked at the safety data and the crash information, there is a crash pattern where the double right turn from Payne Road headed south, there are some side swipe collisions. So we're suggesting some pavement markings to help define where vehicles should be in their lane. So those are some of the improvements that we're recommending. I'll just say, if you can go to the next slide, I'll just say that having right turn restrictions from a driveway is not unusual for Route 1 in Scarborough. These red X's represent driveways in just the Dunstan Corner area of the town where movements are restricted. And in many cases, those have been planned by the community and the town and town staff as a way to control movement so that they're safer, and limit crash patterns and actually improve mobility within the corridor. And if you continue north on Route 1, quite frankly, because of the volume, and it only increases as you go north, there is a desire to control movements in a way as such as what's proposed with the development. Thank you very much, and I'll turn it back to Ben.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. Yes, so since we're talking about traffic, walkability, things like that, I wanted to touch on that a little bit myself. With this next slide, this slide is here to demonstrate some of the reasons why this site was selected. I think a lot of the comments we've gotten recently is that this is not a walkable area, or that this isn't a safe area, or that why would we put new housing in this area? I think one thing I really want to highlight is that the current zoning here is the Town Village Center and Town Village Center 3 district. One thing that I wanted to add is actually all of our building footprints are within that current zone. So when we're talking about, rezoning this area, our proposal is still to keep within the existing zoning requirements. To speak on the Town Village Center, like this is a walkable neighborhood, whether people notice it when driving by or not. All of the businesses here labeled are businesses of daily living for our residents. These are businesses that are within a half-mile of walking distance on striped signalized walkways with sidewalks. So these are safe places for people to be walking. These are respectful places for people to be walking. And these are a critical piece of why this site was selected. There are shopping centers, there are dentists, there's therapy, PT, there's a Walgreens pharmacy, there is therapy clinics, there is places to shop. So what we're trying to demonstrate with this slide is that this is a community, this is a town village center, and we want to add to that and be a part of that community. So from the walkability of this, I wanted to talk about a couple other these critical items that we've requested in our contract zone. I think one of the items that we actually didn't request that I want to highlight is we didn't request an exemption from the growth permits. I think one of the big comments we've talked about in the past and from public comment has been that this is a lot of growth for Scarborough in a place that it shouldn't be. And by us not requesting exemption from those growth permits, I'd like to think that we're demonstrating that we are not outgrowing or outpacing what the community has already decided an acceptable level of growth. Those numbers are set. There is an allotment, and we hope to use what is there as a part of this development. Again, this has all been a part of the collaboration we've done with the town and the community. So a couple other little items that I did want to point out is there is a request for a reduction in some of the EV requirements. That was a bit of a topic today even that came up. Some of the numbers that reflect, I don't want to get too in the weeds on it, but they do reflect a reduction similar to what is required at a lot of the commercial spaces in the community. So we do acknowledge that EV parking is a part of the future. But we would like for our residential use to mimic something similar to the commercial areas requirements. When we talk about these developments, finances come into play a lot, and every requirement that we have, it does put a financial burden on those projects. And so after reviewing the proposed need from the current ordinance, we worked with a local company, Revision Energy, who does a majority of EV infrastructure installations in this community. They're a local South Portland company, employee owned. They did a study with us to study the impact of that infrastructure and to just study the adoption rates of EV cars in communities, particularly with our demographic. We have EV chargers in other properties as well as other housing authorities do as well. And we found that the rate that we would be installing new EV chargers doesn't really match with the infrastructure that would be put in place at that time. We'd be seeing that infrastructure deteriorate faster than we could actually bring it online. And so it would be a bit of a mute gain or money not well spent. So that's a little bit behind that. I just want to also say thank you for everyone's comments. We've taken countless comments from the community. We're really excited about this project. We are, again, a nonprofit organization dedicated to working with communities to create housing. We've certainly had our hurdles, which is why it's taken us so much time to get here. But with those hurdles, I think we've only made improvements that we think everyone will enjoy. So at that, I'll turn it back over to the council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. At this time, I will open this item up for public comment. If there's anyone wishing to make public comment on this item, you can please approach the podium. I will remind everyone to please state your name and address for the public record. And please limit your comments to 3 minutes. If you would like to make a line along the side, that can kind of speed things up.
Well, I'll try my best to comment at 3 minutes, but good evening, council members. I have prepared a small outline. I'm more than happy to share with you. I have 6 copies. So I just want to highlight my concern. I did add that in the early meeting. So really, my concern is we're talking about a non-for-profit entity. And I said that, are they going to pay taxes for what they're building, for the proposed project? They are? Because my understanding as a non-for-profit, they're not subject to taxes unless I am misunderstanding that. So I just want to make sure that they will pay the fair share of taxes for the real estate that they're going to build there. I just want to make sure that that is correct. Is that correct? That's one of things I don't object, right? But then again, he's talking about the South Portland, talking about tax credits. Tax credits is really for accredited investors. So it's not really for everyone that they can go and invest to receive tax credits. So why are they building a housing like that, project that large with tax credits? What is the incentive to have tax credits? That's basically investors, accredited investors that look around and invest in projects like this. But it should be straightforward for the community. It should not be tax credit. It should be like everyone else, like we pay. I'm a resident of Scarborough. I forgot to mention I'm 11%. I pay real estate taxes. I'm a real estate taxes they don't go down. They keep going up and up, and it scared the heck out of me because I live in a fixed income. So pretty much I'm going to be out of my own house because I cannot afford anymore because of the real estate taxes, because we are allowing these projects to be funded as a tax-free element. So I hope I'm wrong that they will pay real estate taxes. But if you can see in the outlines, I won't take a lot of time. This is a briefing of my concerns. I could write a book about it, but then I will repeat the story again. But it's really concerned me. And the last thing is, why allowed 4-story when everything is 3-story? Is that, part of my use of language, seems like to me is greed more than anything else. It's nothing else but greed, building 4 than 3. And also, we love the community. Who's going to receive the direct benefit of this? Are there all the residents of Scarborough going to be in that particular situation? Not situation, but getting housing? Or they're going to bring people from all other towns because it's an affordable housing. So there's a lot of things. There's a huge complex in Saco being built by one of the water parks. A huge complex. They build it everywhere. So why in our town we are having this type of development? Why don't they go to, another town, Falmouth? Why don't they go to the much richer, so to speak, townships?
Mr. Rodriguez.
I want to keep our town safe for everyone. And, I want everybody to pay the fair share of taxes. I don't mind paying taxes, but I want everyone to pay the fair taxes. And
Thank you very
not more
much.
than 3 minutes. Good evening, and thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Sam Cafone, 184 US Route 1. I live across the road that Juniper Place is on now, and the increased sirens and ambulance runs up to that beautiful building is ridiculous. That's gonna happen down there, and there's not easy access in or out. Marshview building, the Marshview Restaurant building is closer to the road, but it's only one store, and there's not the traffic that this monstrosity they want to build is. To me, that's, why don't they build that out in West Scarborough? Where there's more property? Why does it have to be on Route 1? There's already too much traffic on Route 1. Especially if, who's gonna want to drive down the Milliken Road and loop around to go back south? That's a pain, that's a mile and a half. It's ridiculous. Councilor Cushing, growth without taxation isn't real growth. We don't need to give them a $7 million TIF. That's a joke. I'm sick of TIFs in this town. What about the existing taxpayers and business owners? They don't get any TIFs. They just get higher taxes because you spend money like water. Thank you, Councilor Doherty. You seem to be the only one that's in tune with the actual people of Scarborough. If this actually came to a vote with the Scarborough citizens, I don't think it would pass. But you people just want to spend money, spend money. And now that we currently have a new business that my wife took over, the taxes are ridiculous on that. And as far as your mooring, I paid for a mooring last year and never got it in the water, and I still had to pay again this year. So that's all I said. I'm definitely not in favor of this project at all.
Thank you, Mr. Gopal. Welcome.
Thank you. My name's Shannon Hay. I live at 14 Broadturn Road. Before I make the statement, I would just like to commend God, I got such a big voice already. The people that have prepared the project at Dunstan Corner. I think it's beautiful. I know that a lot of time and effort went into it. And so I don't want to discount the plan for your project because I think it's beautiful. I just am really opposed to the amount of growth that we've seen in this town. So if we could put it on the outskirts of town or somewhere that it wasn't going to tax our infrastructure as much as all of the development has. I'm just going to read this. I wrote it down because I just didn't want to forget anything. So I live at 14 Broadturn Road. I have been a lifelong resident of Scarborough. I grew up in Pine Point, and I just watched our town really change dramatically over the last 50 years, which is inevitable, I get. But I just don't see the quaint beach community that it was when I was growing up. I just feel like it's been invaded by a lot of people from away that may not understand the culture that it once was. My mom still lives in Pine Point. Like I said, I bought in Scarborough. I wanted my daughter to go to Scarborough schools. I just don't see the same kind of culture that we had growing up. And I miss that. And I miss the small town mentality. Read what I wrote because I kind of was name calling a little bit. I just think that it's caused a dramatic shift in our cottage community, the types of homes that are being built, the types of cottages that are just going away. It's just not the same type of atmosphere. I've watched people that I've known my whole life being forced to sell their generational homes in the beach communities. My neighbor just informed me tonight that she's going to have to sell her house because she owes back taxes that she can't afford and she's on a fixed income. And it breaks my heart because she's wonderful. And it's just due to the amount of tax increases that we have had. What should only be a 10-minute drive from Walmart to my house often takes me 30 minutes or more. And it's frustrating. And that's not even in the summer. I don't even want to talk about that. I was informed that my home is located in what has just been rezoned into a business district. So I am now a non-conforming home in a business district. It results with me having an inability to make one change to my house whatsoever without now appearing before the planning board, going before a variance. I was told I could not even put a roof over my existing porch to create a covered porch look. So that's frustrating. several homes on my street in a business district are still on septic. We don't even have sewer in a business district, and that's frustrating. For me, it's about infrastructure. I mean, how many of our residents in general still aren't offered public sewer and water? Many, from what I understand. I just oppose this project because I just feel like part of what this town has done is do a lot of growth without as much consideration on the infrastructure needed to alleviate the problems of being asked to build a $160 million school. I mean, did we not know when we were building the homes that we were going to need a bigger schools and more space for our schools? And the last thing I want, being a graduate of Scarborough, my daughter being a graduate of Scarborough, is seeing our kids being underserved here.
With that, I'm going to ask you to
That's
wrap
it.
up.
Yep, let's see. I still didn't read it, right? I would just like the planning board to consider, and the council to consider the existing population that you have just by opposing as many development projects and anything that's going to result in more population growth, increases in traffic, wastewater management issues, as well as any other drain, public safety and our resources. Until these issues are addressed, I would just ask that we maybe table some of the development that we have planned.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tracy. I live on 16 Hidden Creek. My office is just adjacent to the proposed plan, and I am there looking out my window firsthand, seeing the traffic build up, and at times 10 minutes just to pull out of my parking lot. If you don't live there and you're not there every day looking at the traffic backing up and how hard it is already to turn left in there, you won't know. So, I mean, they can say 34 people coming in and out. I see big problems right now. And if this thing keeps continuing, we're all going to be stuck on lights during the summer and never even getting to the beach. And our sweet town is just getting bigger and bigger. And if we want a big city, we're on our way to it. And if we want massive traffic problems, we're definitely on our way with this. Some other things at Jocelyn Place, I went down there and I checked that out, and it works, but it works because of that area. It's put back behind Hannaford. It's nowhere near Route 1. So you can't compare Jocelyn Place to Route 1 with a right out and a right in. It just doesn't work. Another thing that's going to happen is they can extend that barrier all they want. There's still vacant turns there. I see it on the other side of the street with the housing authority that they're trying to force the people the other way. They always turn. And then what they're going to do is if they miss that turn, they're going to my semicircle and they're going to be doing that all day long, which it already happens. And I mean, it's hard and it's just not the right place. It's not good for the environment, dropping 24,000 square feet of fill, whether you think the marsh isn't relevant in that spot or not, it's relevant to me. It's the marsh. And we need to stop that. It can't be moved back. It can't be moved forward. If they need to expand the road in the future, there'll be no space for it. It's just not the right place. On top of it, don't like to admit it, but I am shy from the 55 age. That's saying someone my age with 2 children in primary school could possibly live there. Saying at the last meeting, they said that they're not going to have very many children and it won't affect the schools, but it will. There's many of people that had children later in life, like myself, that have children that age. It will put a drain onto the schools. There's no way it won't. I mean, having that many units going in and out is definitely a strain. Let me see if there's anything else. There's plenty. But overall, oh yeah, that's right. I was going to ask that. One thing we wanted to ask is how much are those units going for? What is the average price for the workforce, as well as the other units? Would be definitely something we'd like to know. My office has gone up well over 50% just in taxes. How fair is that? You know, all the houses have gone up. Nothing's getting better. It's just getting worse the more we build and build and build. And there's just not going to be anything left to enjoy. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tracy.
I have not prepared anything. My name is Linda Dupre. I live on Bay Street in Pine Point. I've raised my children here. I love this town. I love the school system. I have had nothing but gratitude for the education they received. I'm a clinical social worker, but later on I became a therapeutic foster parent. And it was amazing, the services that those kids received through the school system here. I was really grateful. Our roads are great. They're plowed before anyone else's. If you drive to Old Orchard, it's a nightmare until you hit the Scarborough line. I am really concerned about this. First of all, I don't believe that the stormwater is not going to affect the marsh. We already have flooding every winter. And I don't believe that it's not going to affect the marsh. I don't think the traffic is going to be insignificant the way they're describing it. If you can come out of there and only make a right-hand turn, how do the people go left when they want to go south? How is that going to happen, and where is that going to break down? It already takes 30 minutes, what used to take 10 minutes, when you drive along that corner route to get to the Pine Point Road through those lights, either coming straight down through Route 1, or if you come through Payne Road and go that way. It's a traffic jam at least twice a day. And it's a long time. It's not just a 15-minute traffic jam. I can't imagine that's not going to get significantly worse. My taxes get ridiculous. Every year they've gone up. I'm lucky I can still stay in my own house. And I question, guys, are you putting the cart before the horse? We're getting more people in and more people to support, and yet we don't have enough school system for the kids that we've got now. And something is out of balance, and I wish we could look at that, but I am concerned, and I don't support this. I love the idea of it. I just wish they would do it someplace else, like farther on the outskirts of town. And if I wanted to live in a city, I would have moved to New York. I like that we're a town. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
Hi, my name is Kayla Meyer. I live at 27 Jasper Street, which is a little ways down Pine Point. I come with some, I guess, different concerns. I do share the concerns of my fellow townspeople. But in particular, apart from the obvious flooding of the marsh that many of us have to, take a 3-mile loop to avoid in the winter, which has, I guess, happened more regularly since, like 2020, and when some of this building has really taken off. They also, on Pine Point Road, I'm going to use the word snuck in a development it's huge. I mean, it's going to have quite a few large homes, a lot more blacktop. It is extremely close to the marsh. It will almost certainly drain into there, whether or not they've planned for it. I don't know how you couldn't, because it's the watershed area. So no matter what we do, we're really taxing that area. The poor kayak place on the marsh is fighting for survival. And apart from that, I have serious concerns about historical preservation. Scarborough has, especially in the Pine Point, Dunstan area, actually a very rich cultural history, and goes back a long ways. And the Marshview Restaurant is one of those places that really should try to be preserved. I have young kids in the school system as well, and they don't really have anywhere to go play. There's not many playgrounds available to us in that area. Blue Point has a really small school. I think that this area would be better suited for some permeable surfaces, perhaps a park or something that the whole town can enjoy. A lot of parents ask for like a splash pad or someplace that, we can all gather and have that community building that I think is disappearing with some of these mega complexes. A lot of these apartment buildings house tons of working people. They don't really have time to engage in the community. If they do, it's kind of hard to have friends over if you live in a giant apartment complex. My mother-in-law lived in a 55 plus affordable housing unit that's in Scarborough. There was no place for us to meet with her. There was nowhere to go. So community building is really lacking in some of these big apartment complexes. And I think that we're paving over a lot of history that could otherwise be preserved with a little effort and input from the rest of the community. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Kayla. Mr. Hayes, welcome.
Thank you. You want to tell them my address too?
I'll let you do it.
My name is Richard Hayes. I live on Martin Avenue. I am against this project. I attended the planning board meeting and most everyone at that meeting was also against it. There was one lady who spoke in favor of housing and I too would support there is a need for housing. This is the wrong place. I made some notes, which I usually don't, but as I get older, I find I forget a lot of things. A 45-foot wall, 25 feet off of Route 1 is not an attractive site. They are filling wetlands, which is wrong in my mind. We talk about and have talked about, there's been a number of meetings and a lot of talk about the marsh. This is going to have an effect on the marsh. The right turn only. That's a disaster waiting to happen. I've witnessed people coming out of the apartment complex that's across the street from this proposal. People coming out to head south, which the driveway is cut that way, and making a left-hand turn. It happened to me a week ago. Woman pulled out across 4 lanes, 2 lanes going south and to go north. One gentleman at the planning board meeting who spoke said, if you're coming from Portland and you live there, how are you going to get in there? Are you going to go Milliken Road over to Payne Road and around? Are you going to go Haggis Parkway to Payne Road and around? It's ridiculous. People are not going to do that. It's interesting to me that the DOT, who owns the road right next to it, has no interest in working with these people to create a access. They admitted that. They also, the people who own the property going the other way, have no interest in working with them to create an exit to come around to the light by the Walgreens. So there's neighbors with land who have no interest in working with these folks to do this. The 55 and older community is probably still working. I don't believe the numbers that they're proposing as far as exits and enters. So my time is up. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. And please stop this project. Thank you.
Welcome.
Hello, my name is Trustin Hamilton. I live at 9 Lamplighter Lane here in Scarborough. I'm a 37-year-old. I have a wife and a 2-year-old child. I would like to stay in Scarborough. Projects like this aren't adding to actual workforce. We're not looking for another apartment to rent. I currently rent a house in Scarborough. I would love to stay in Scarborough and purchase a house. Things like this raise property tax, and I'm never going to be able to do that. So as long as things like this keep continuing, then I'm going to continue to look for houses outside of this community, which I don't want to do. So I don't support this at all.
Thank you, sir. Welcome.
Good evening. Scott Perry, Pine Point. Nice pictures, smoke and mirrors, okay? I would like to add to the opposition against the proposed apartment complex, 578 Route 1 Scarborough. Not only will this development create an increase in traffic and congestion on Route 1 and Payne roads, it would create an eyesore and likely an environmental risk to the very marsh that Scarborough residents have voted for and paid to preserve. There's absolutely no justifiable reason to erect a 4-story, 97-unit apartment complex in this location, except to line the pockets of those who build, sell, rent these units. The common arguments always seem to be affordability, workforce housing, and tax relief. Affordability. If you can't afford to buy a home in Scarborough, then you live somewhere that you can afford and commute to work just like most people do, or at least used to do. I can't afford to live on the coast in Cape Elizabeth or on Sebago Lake. You guys gonna give me tax breaks on my move? Workforce housing. Why are Scarborough residents subsidizing housing for people working in Portland and South Portland? What about all the other new complexes being built along Mussey Road and elsewhere? Are those also Portland workforce housing? You also approved Scarborough Downs. That was sold as a solution to all these problems by creating a new town within a town. There seems to be no end to the amendments for that development. Luckily, that eyesore is at least hidden. There aren't enough businesses in Scarborough to hire the people already here, let alone the wages needed to live in all those condos and apartments already built or being built. Let Portland and South Portland deal with their own housing issues and stop letting them use Scarborough as a dumping ground for their low-income housing projects. Tax relief. I doubt Scarborough taxpayers are going to see a tax benefit from all these tax breaks. Saying that taxes would be higher if not for all these tax breaks for low-income housing is arbitrary. No matter how many condos you build, taxes are still going to go up. This project is likely not going to stop here once they get a foothold or get the Trojan horse behind the gate. What's to stop them from trying to purchase the adjacent lots and expand by amendment into another Scarborough Downs with multiple high-rise buildings, pricey marsh view condos, and of course, coming up, dedicated traffic lights, adding to the already poor traffic flow caused by the other poorly designed, programmed, managed so-called AI traffic lights. There's no way they're going to keep this right turn. Smoke and mirrors, people, smoke and mirrors. Town council members are elected officials who are expected to be responsive to the needs and concerns of their constituents. They make decisions on behalf of the community, including matters related to public safety, infrastructure, and community development. It's time for all the Scarborough Town councils, boards, committees, commissions, work groups to start taking care of the problems we already have, not creating new ones. Focus on doing the job you were elected to do and look out for Scarborough residents already living here. Not the Portland, South Portland, or the corporations that get rich off all the tax breaks, sales, and rent-a-mil. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Guys, I'm gonna ask that you please don't applaud. Just, it gets disruptive. You get it. Thank you, Stannis. Hi.
Hi, yes, Stannis Moody Roberts, 38 County Road. I'm a little bit shook. I understand the expression about wanting to slow development, seeing our town growing rapidly. But if there's any development that we could want, it would be affordable housing. It's what the state desperately needs. It's what our town desperately needs. And where else would you put something like this? When you talk about the outskirts of town and putting this to the outskirts of town, the way our zoning works right now, that would mean 180 acres worth of cul-de-sac homes to create the amount of units of housing that this small footprint could actually provide. I think there are really valid concerns around the environment, around the neighborhood, around the traffic patterns. But I do want to say, if you look at traffic counts on Route 1, they've been flat for the past 20 years. In fact, the section between Payne Road and between Oak Hill is down from where it was 20 years ago. Despite all of the growth that we've had, and
Ladies and gentlemen, everyone was quiet while you were at the podium. I would ask that you please show the same respect.
a flea market, for example, how many people are going into that flea market every day? That there's traffic going on because of the development that exists there right now. What we have with senior housing is something that's actually net positive for the town, that maybe there are 4 or 5 families that would go in there. But the vast majority are seniors. They're seniors that are in need of affordable housing. It's not people from away that are moving here. It's our grandparents and our parents. People who don't have a massive 401k that they can rely on or haven't paid off their mortgages, and have houses they can live in for the rest of their lives. But it's people that need workforce and need affordable housing. And this is a nonprofit coming in. It's not like it's a developer trying to enrich themselves off it. I think if we're looking to control development, we need to look at other places. We need to look at controlling the amount of cul-de-sacs that are going in, the number of McMansions that are going in. But this is something that we need to find a way to actually work for our town. And I really hope that we can figure out how that can be possible, because right now I have friends who are going to be camping in my yard for the summer because there's nowhere in Portland that they can afford. I have a 6th grade Scarborough teacher that's living in my backyard because there's nowhere that you can afford. And we have to look at our zoning somehow to enable affordable housing to work in Scarborough. And if we don't want it in the center of town, then we're going to need to make places for trailer parks in the outskirts or something to make this work. So thank you.
Thank you, Stanis. Hi, welcome.
Good evening. My name's Tim Diamede. I live at 18 Ryefield Drive, living the dream there. I'm a proud NIMBY tonight, not because I'm against growth, but because I believe we should be asking growth for whom and at what cost. My son Charlie, he starts kindergarten this fall. And he's already on a wait list for after school care. And we missed the cut for spring and summer t-ball. And fall soccer, also on the wait list. So that's the reality for families in Scarborough. Childcare to recreation is stretched thin. We drive 25 minutes just to find a pool. Our kids can't get into local programs. And somehow, we're being told that we have capacity to absorb another large new housing development. And this isn't just about Marsh View, it's about how Scarborough is changing. We're not building a community. We're building a commuter corridor with more banks. I think there's like 22 banks and credit unions right now. There's more banks, storage units, apartment complexes, and corporate grocery stores. But where are the gathering spaces? Where are the places that make people feel connected to where they live? I'm glad to hear that the budget's working towards it, but it's not quite there yet. Marsh View in particular, it feels especially out of step, and this is to echo a lot of the voices tonight. A 4-story, And I noticed they didn't really have a lot of pictures of the actual, like what it looked like. It was at the beginning of the slide and then it was like, okay, next slide. I don't know. With the new architecture, within Portland, everything that goes up, it's this corrugated metal siding and it's like 3 tones of, it looks dated as soon as it's built. Anyways, a 4-story metal sided complex next to the Scarborough Marsh. That's not scenic, it's short-sighted. This isn't just a view. It's one of Maine's most important ecosystems. And we're on the verge of boxing it in. Once you put pavement down, there's no going back. Any fisherman, birder, or kid out there exploring, in that kayak or the marsh, they're gonna see that building above the tree line. And let's not pretend this won't make traffic worse. My 67-year-old mother lives in town and drives 3 times a day. She drives way more than she ever drove before. And 55 is not that old. I see the light blinking. So I'm not here to say we shouldn't build. I'm here to say we need to breathe, pause, listen to our residents who live here, raise kids here, retire here. Let's build smarter with intention, with character, with a plan that brings us together instead of pushing us out. Scarborough deserves development that works for families, for the environment, and for the future. Thank you.
Mr. Gates, welcome.
Thank you, Chairwoman Seiler. Marvin Gates, 423 Black Point Road. I'm opposed to the project as it's being presented now. I attended the planning board meeting. I also attended the Housing Alliance meeting on this subject. And at the planning board meeting, having sat on long-range planning for a few years, I learned how to read these 377-page preliminary site plan applications. And I noticed on its page 33, which is obviously in your packet tonight, item 3 in your packet, amendment or addition, whatever you call it, number 3. I get lost in these kinds of minutia, obviously, but I saw them writing, wetland impacts are necessary to facilitate the project and bring affordable housing into the town stock. And I thought, oh golly, well, that's a clear sentence. On the one hand, it's affordable housing, and on the other, it's wetland impact. You can't have it both ways. And that's pretty much what my comment was at the planning board. I went to the Housing Alliance meeting and heard mostly their discussion of the planning board Marsh View findings, and that's also in your packet. And one of the things that I was struck by at the planning board, and forgive me, I perhaps should have prepared these remarks better, that was not discussed at the Housing Alliance, where they were contemplating giving this project $400,000 seed money, which with a town of 20,000 is $20 out of every man, woman, and child's pocket. I just don't think this is ready for prime time, and I'll tell you why, and it has to do with the traffic. I'll try to do it in the remaining 20 seconds. There was a discussion at the planning board meeting where one of the members, Mr. Hebert, asked the town engineer, who I know is here, about flooding on Route 1. And his final, I mean, you can all see it on the recording. I'm not going to, don't have the time to read it now, of course. The finding was from, Mr. Hebert said, from what I've seen and lived here for 10 years, but grew up in the area my entire life, the occasions of flooding seem to be more frequent these past few years. And from just a logistical standpoint, I'm speaking to the planning board members now, this is a quote. If there is a flood event and you're trying to turn right, where are you going to go? You can't get out of the place. And I've heard people speak about infrastructure. And I've heard people, another lady said, this is about putting the cart before the horse. Fix the way you can get out of the place when there's a flood. And I'd think, well, maybe not, I don't know. But that's not even close to being done. And I hope you all know that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marvin. Hi, welcome.
Hi, my name's Pat Sullivan. I live on Queens Drive in the Dunstan area. So the zoning on this is a TVC 3. I imagine that's it's supposed to be village scaled kind of atmosphere. So you're talking about a 4-story building in this area. I mean, we've got some over at the Great American Neighborhood that it's not, they're 2 stories, and then there's one that's 3 stories, but it's behind, so it's not exactly on Route 1. So if we could, if they scaled it back to maybe 2 stories, or, cut down some of the other buildings, maybe it's doable. And then one other thing about the traffic. So when the turnpike has a problem, everybody's coming north, south, and it's all backed up all the way to Len Libby's, down to Saco. We can't get out of our roads. So that's another impact when something happens on the turnpike. Okay, and I'm opposed to this whole project too.
Thank you, ma'am. Mrs. Hamel, welcome.
Good evening, Sue Hamill, Bay Street and Pine Point. Thank you for listening to all the public comment tonight. And I'm here to voice my opposition to the project. But before I begin, I'd like to just remind the council that your role here is to review projects on behalf of Scarborough taxpayers. And sometimes that means saying no to a developer when a project is flawed and poorly suited to its location. That is your responsibility. I also want to point out that there was little opposition to other similar projects like Village Commons, Jocelyn Place, the Uplands, and the Downs. South Portland Housing Authority recently purchased another piece of land across from Jocelyn Place. So more affordable housing is already in the pipeline. Some projects make sense in the right location. Marshview is not one of them. And the reasons are the traffic. I mean, I don't need to belabor that point. Everyone has done a great job talking about it. The setback is just too small. But the taxpayer subsidies are something I'd like to focus on. The $400,000 that they've requested from the Housing Alliance, and a 75% CEA, which will cost the taxpayers $6.6 million over 30 years. The developer has also said that they expect about 30 children to come from the units in the back. At $20,000 per student, the annual cost to taxpayers is at least $600,000. The burden on our taxpayers is just too high. Local residents are unlikely to benefit from this project. And that's a requirement for a contract zone. It won't benefit Scarborough residents. Finally, growth management. The town council has committed to setting a clear policy objectives for affordable and workforce housing. Let's define those goals
before we approve more projects. We've absorbed far too much growth in the past few years. Senior housing, workforce housing, market rate developments, it all adds up. It all strains our roads, schools, infrastructure, and erodes the character of the town. Residents are saying it clearly, enough is enough. Please listen to the people of Scarborough. Say no to this project. Thanks.
Thank you, Sue. Anyone else wishing to make public comment this evening? No one online? Seeing none, or no more rather, I will go ahead and close public comment. At this point, I will ask for a motion from the council.
So moved.
Second.
Council discussion. Scott would like to go first. You got it, buddy. Thank you.
Well, I think we just been told what we're supposed to do. That's it.
Thank you, Councilor Doherty. Councilor Anderson, and then Councilor Shu.
Yeah, first I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight and sharing their opinion, and to the developer coming to give us that presentation, and all the people who over the past few days who have written the council. We may not respond to everything, but we do read them. So thank you for being involved and being engaged. I think there are some pros to this project. A lot of what we've been discussing about, we do have affordable housing gap in town that we do need to find places to put it. Being on something like Route 1 is really the ideal place for these types of projects, specifically for the walkability, the access to transit, and other things of that nature. And we're zoned specifically to have stuff like this here, as opposed to somewhere else in town, like in our RF zone, where we don't have infrastructure. It would be more expensive and likely cost prohibitive for an affordable housing project, something like this, to actually be able to survive. We do need workforce housing, and I know I hear tonight, some concerns about that, but I sit on the SEDCO board, and they recently talked to Maine Health, which has their campus here, to understand the challenges of recruiting nurses, technicians to our population, because it's so expensive to live here. I know they could live somewhere else and work somewhere else, and that's typically what they do. And so it really does put pressure on our affordable housing, and need to make sure that we adjust our zoning accordingly. Mostly applies for this type of use. I know there's concerns about deed restricted affordable housing like this project is intended to when you dig into the survey and really look at it, 50% of residents had said for income restricted affordable housing, we're growing way too slow. So it's a challenge because it is something that we know we need and we want. But there are those other things that we have to deal with as well in terms of people's perceptions on growth and taxes. So I say all this to say, while there are definitely pros here, in this particular scenario, I think the cons unfortunately outweigh the pros. So, as was said tonight, we were supposed to have a workshop today that got postponed to June to really talk about our affordable housing strategy. So I really encourage everybody who is here tonight to come to that meeting in June and help work with us to think about, what should our affordable housing strategy be, to enable some of those great benefits that I think they do bring to our community. The public reaction to this has been, pretty against it, which I understand. The issue I have specifically with the location is the traffic, not the new traffic that it will create, but the challenges of that specific site and the location and the right turnout. From a common sense perspective, like putting everything aside, I just don't understand how this particular site will work. Not even just for this project, but for anything that may go in there. When I think of traffic counts and what could happen there based on what's zoned, there could be something that goes in there that's smaller in scale, but much worse in terms of traffic. So this project and what it's trying to do, I think, is probably one of the best projects that would minimize traffic impact, but still that challenge of the location is a concern. We've heard many people talk about the marsh and Phillips Brook, which is an urban impaired stream. And while I appreciate that they've tried to work within that footprint to protect it as much as possible, it just feels like this particular project is doing too much. And while I appreciate it's trying to do as much as it can to address our need, you know, again, for that particular location, I would like to see it scaled down. You know, the concern about scale and fit within the neighborhood, I think is a legitimate concern. 45 feet is very high. It would be kind of the first building there that you see when you come down the marsh or when you go into the marsh. And I think that's just, you know, a challenge. And while I appreciate that height is really with the intent of less sprawl to have less impact on the environment, I just think it's too much. So with all of those considerations, you know, I'm not going to support the contract zone amendment tonight, though I do encourage the developer to go back and see if they can address some of these concerns in terms of reducing scale, you know, maybe not having the workforce component and just really double clicking on the senior affordable component and what that would look like in that particular district. And you may not even need a contract zone amendment to come before the council at that point. So I think for tonight, I'm a no, but I do hope that you come back with a different alternative that allows us to meet some of the needs that we have in our community.
Thank you, John. Counselor Shute?
Thank you. I appreciate Counselor Anderson bringing up that we were supposed to have that workshop tonight, because one of my thoughts was that one of our goals as a council was to discuss housing needs in Scarborough, and we haven't quite had that conversation yet. What's interesting is Saco is actually having it next week. They have a workshop with their residents to talk about their housing needs, and I think that's a great idea. I actually live on Pine Point Road. I have 2 kids. I am up and down that road constantly. So I hear all the residents. I read all your emails. I do not support this project. I watched the planning board meeting. I've never seen the planning board come up in opposition so strong on a project in my involvement in town politics. I just think it's a fatal flaw for that property location alone to not have access to Route 1 South. If you're coming home from work, there's no clear definition of how you're actually getting home right now. And so I think that is very worrisome to me. We had Men Health Wellness come here tonight. They have, if we were going to go forward, I feel like we would have to solve their driveway solution. And then we have the antique store who emailed us as well. And I have witnessed people coming out of the housing project on that side, cutting through the antique store. I didn't know what they were doing at first, and realizing that they're just using that as their cut through. That's not fair to them. And I don't want to add to the burden of the businesses and the residents and the people that are there. I think it's just a very unsafe situation. I don't think extending the barrier to make it right in, right out is going to help at all. I don't support the waivers that they're asking for either. You know, I think we've all discussed, I think getting that close to Route 1, if we want to expand Route 1, that's going to become an issue immediately. The height, the EV, they want an exception for the EV ordinance, all of those things. I'm not a fan of filling the wetlands anytime, any place. So, you know, if there's a way to develop this land and not fill wetlands and not go 4 feet and create safe access for the people who are there, I think that's great, but I cannot support this at this time.
Thank you, Karen. Counselor Cushing?
Thanks. So, I don't really believe this is ready for prime time yet. But at some point, this community really needs to wrap its head around the fact that as a country, we've grown. Our population grows. We're having more babies. Growth does not stop. Many people think of that as progress. The question really is, can this community develop some rational consensus around what we want for growth, so that we're not in my backyard, but we're having some conversation where developers, people, landowners who want to sell their property, all of those folks live here too. And so if we continue to go through a process where we have a proposal, it has difficulties, we have outrage for the people who are in the general proximity, and we kill the project. That's kind of the path that we've been on so far. And, you know, wetlands, I'm a fan of wetlands, but let's be honest, sometimes we're using wetlands as an excuse, a no growth excuse. So there's a lot of this stuff out there, and until we have an honest conversation about that, then we'll be right back here with this kind of stuff. I guess the other thing I would say is that I think that when I hear comments that essentially impugn the integrity of people who come before this project process, who have worked hard, who have invested money to try to do something constructive, as if they are money grabbing, selfish people, I'm offended by that. So for those of you who might want to reconsider the spirit of your comments, because that doesn't do anything positive for this community. The people who come here tonight come here in good faith, and they deserve that respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cushing. Councillor Fellows.
Thank you. I guess I'm going to start by piggybacking a little bit on what Councillor Cushing just said. And, you know, this one hits sort of close to home for me, if you pardon the bad pun, because you all know this is what I do as my day job, is try to develop affordable housing. Sometimes in places where there's strong opposition to it for a wide range of reasons. And I guess I wanted to just start by commenting on a couple of comments that were made, including the very first one from the public about this being so-called sort of tax-free. And it's an understandable misunderstanding. That's a term. When a project sponsor like the South Portland Housing Authority, or if it was Avesta Housing coming in front of us, they may be a 501c3 nonprofit, but the project itself, the development partnership that will actually own the property, will be taxable. So they pay taxes. What level of taxes they pay is ultimately determined by a combination of how it's assessed, and if there ends up being a credit enhancement agreement, that factors into it as well. But by no means is it a get out of jail free card and nobody's paying any taxes. I'll also point out that renters pay taxes. They pay sales taxes, they pay excise taxes, and they pay school fees and lots of other things. So I think that's an important reminder for all of us as well. So, and I'm not going to get into a binary thing about the former flea market versus what might go on this site eventually. But it's not as if the former use that was there was generating millions of dollars in taxes for the town. So I think it's important to think about what's been there and sort of what the current baseline is. And that's in no way to impugn that business. I know it was beloved by a lot of people and got a fair amount of traffic, actually. As I observed, I also live down Pine Point Road, not too far from where Councillor Shoup lives. So I've seen some of these things myself as well. Another just sort of point of clarification, there were a couple of comments about Housing Alliance funding, and staff, Tom, you can correct me if I'm speaking out of turn. My understanding has always been that the funds that the Housing Alliance makes available to qualified projects to support affordable housing do not come from taxes. They come from other developments. Correct. Is that correct? All right, thank you. So that goes into a pot. Applicants have to apply for it. There's no guarantee that they get it, and there are sort of strings that are typically attached to that. So I just wanted to make that correction as well. And then there's sort of this recurring theme of, well, if it was somewhere else, and one of the members of the public spoke to this somewhat, but I can guarantee you that if a similar scale project came in front of us, we'd have a room full of people here, maybe from different parts of town, who would be opposed to it because it would be in their backyards. Or it would require an obscene amount of acreage based on the current zoning, which was pointed out. So that's something, and again, I'm not trying to demean anyone's opinion or perspective. It's a very understandable impulse. There are a lot of valid concerns about this project, but I hear this a lot from sort of both sides of the table, that I support affordable housing, but somewhere else. And just to sort of speak to what this council's role is, similar to the planning board, we can only consider what comes in front of us. We don't go out and find sites. We're not the ones who designed this project. We're not the ones who cited this project. We have a duty and an obligation to give a fair hearing to the applicant based on the merits and what's brought in front of us. So I hope people understand that. All of that said, I think I'm going to echo a lot of what Councilor Anderson said. This really checks a lot of boxes for me, given the underlying zoning, the criteria of a contract zone, the height and density that would be allowed here as of right. And again, for the council and for my fellow councilors, as well as members of the public, something could very well go in here as of right that would not require any special reviews by the council or trigger the level of public input that this has. And I just, to what Councilor Cushing said, it's not that it's any particular development pattern is inevitable, but given the growth that we're seeing overall, that we cannot completely insulate ourselves from, as Don said earlier, we can't build a wall. We already have a rate of growth ordinance that's intended to sort of bake in the concerns about growth and infrastructure development. Given all that, something will probably eventually go in here. And I just want everyone to sort of understand that. So I guess to wrap up, I'm generally on the same wavelength as Councilor Anderson and Councilor Cushing. And that while I see a lot of positives here, clearly doesn't have the level of support needed to move forward in its current form. I don't think it would be responsible as a council or really do much of a service to the applicant to try to push it forward, knowing that it does seem to have some fatal flaws. For me, it really ultimately comes down to the right in, right out, especially given the unfortunate confluence of events where the federal grant that was going to help us pay to raise Route 1 is now frozen due to factors well beyond our control. So that sort of compounds things, and that's been brought up before. I mean, it really pains me because I do think there are a lot of great things about this project. I don't have any issue with the scale. I think there are a lot of subjective opinions about aesthetics. I don't know what all of your houses look like. I might not like how they look. I will say that people want to live in Scarborough and they want to live in the Downs and places that some other places that people disparage, and everyone's sort of got their personal taste. But at the end of the day, I do hope there's a way for some version of this project to come back in a way that can be supported. And I think we need to be clear that there's nothing about this process that's inherently inappropriate. I think we're all just kind of doing our best to work through it. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. With that, I will go ahead and offer my comments, which at this point, pretty much everything that I would have said or would have touched on has been articulated very clearly by my colleagues. To quote one of our public speakers, I'm a little shook reading some of the emails and hearing the tone of some of the public comments. And I'll speak to that for just a second because I do love this town. And I think those of us who speak passionately, who dedicate time to serving the town, those that come and offer public comment, we share that in common. We love this town. And so I would ask my neighbors to avoid disparaging one another at the podium or over email. There's nothing that anyone could say that would convince me otherwise that families and children and growth in this town does not enrich us all. And I think that having diverse housing is a key component to that enrichment we all enjoy. And so I am firmly committed and looking forward to the workshop where we can discuss exactly what our housing goals look like. But I am firmly committed to providing diverse housing for our community And that does not mean not serving the residents that currently live here. I don't think that those two things are not capable at the same time. And so the other thing that I will say is I do have concerns about what the redevelopment of this site will look like. Councilor Fellows spoke to it briefly. For a project that does not require this level of rigor and public input and council input, frankly, we get a lot of emails about development that happens around town that never comes before this council because it is zoned appropriately, because the permits are available, and because the planning board deems the project appropriate for the zone in which it is being built. And so it's a little bit of be careful what we wish for here. I would like to see a project come forward that does go through a rigorous public process. And so I hope that whatever the future for this redevelopment is, that it does include affordable housing, that we will see these gentlemen back again with a proposal that perhaps fits the site in a way that is workable for Route 1. I wholeheartedly believe that the traffic concerns that people, I also live out in West Scarborough, so I travel that several times a day. I know that those concerns are real. I'm less concerned about the congestion, frankly, if I'm being honest, than I am the safety concerns of people getting impatient and doing illegal quick maneuvers to try and get out of a situation. And so I think that at this point, I am also not going to support the project as presented. And I would just encourage the developers to come back to the council with something that perhaps fits the site more appropriately. And I look forward to furthering the conversation. I want to thank my colleagues for all the time and energy that we have spent on this. And I sincerely hope, and I also want to thank the public. I sincerely hope that I responded to everybody. If you got to me after 5 o'clock today, I think are the only ones that I missed. And so if I didn't get back to you, please re-email me and I'll be sure to give you a response. With that, are there any other comments from the council? Yes, Scott, go ahead.
Just one, the thing that's missing, I think, is we're going to big corporations. You have the trailer parks, and it's big corporations of the state that own them, and the state's trying to help the people be able to buy it, have first refusal on it. I think that's a great thing to do, to help people in the state of Maine and locally. Another thing, the town of Scarborough, I've always been, since I was a teenager, I always thought maybe I'd just build a garage apartment to start. But in the town of Scarborough, it's against the ordinance to do that. And it's like, why would you do that? Why wouldn't you help? There's ways to just pass ordinances to help the residents. It doesn't cost taxpayers anything. Allow them, a young couple, to buy a lot, build a garage apartment, and then as they have a family or whatever, then they can build a house. And then they may have income from that. Good for them. The residents will get the benefit from it. So some corporation out of state. Then as they get older, who knows? They'd live in that apartment. So there's, like I said, we're going to have workshops on this, but this is just something that I've always thought of. And I just, we're pushing and we're giving all kinds of breaks and stuff for the big developers to do these big, and you're forcing people to do rental. You've got to come with a way to go back to letting the young generation get equity in a home. There's got to be a way to do that. I mean, that's how it always was. And to be pushing and giving tax breaks to funnel them into this, web that they can't get out of is wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councilor Fellows.
Very quickly, and then I'll let you finish wrapping.
Certainly.
Just to speak to that somewhat, at least indirectly, I mean, we do have the housing workshop, which I believe has now been rescheduled for June 4th.
Yes, sir.
And I think part of the idea behind having these conversations is that we really do want to talk about, there's a lot of focus on these kind of high profile multifamily rental projects. But we also, I think, want to talk about it in a broader sense and how all the different, it's really housing diversity, different forms of ownership, rental, accessory units, things like that, and how it all fits together, because it is, as Councilor Doherty says, it is all somewhat interrelated. And on that note, it just, it's occurred to me, it's really struck me recently over the past year or so, just anecdotally, and I don't know how representative it is or isn't, but it's really struck me that in talking to people, quite a few people who live in places like the Downs, almost invariably they moved there from somewhere else in town. They had some kind of a life change, divorce or a retirement or whatever the case may be, and they moved into the Downs or to, to another smaller home because it was a good fit for them. And I think it is important to recognize that, homeownership is not always for everyone, either by economic necessity or by choice. So I think, it all sort of fits together, and I'm looking forward to having those conversations in the workshop form and then going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. With those closing remarks, I will go ahead and call the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? I show that as unanimous. Thank you. At this time, we are going to go ahead and take a recess until 9:45. Thank you. All right, everybody, welcome back. At this point, we are on to order number 25-048. First reading and schedule a public hearing and second reading on the proposed amendment to Chapter 405C, the shoreland zoning ordinance to expand the stream protection overlay district and amend the shoreland zoning map to reflect associated changes. Thank you, Autumn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Angela Blanchett, Town Engineer, is here as well for questions
Angela.
on this item. This is a two-part request. It's part amending the ordinance, and it's also comes with a shoreline zoning map change. So this one has already been to the planning board to consider the zoning map change. This is really in response to the Maine Department of Environmental Protection's Integrated Water Quality and Assessment Report list. Phillips Brook and Red Brook are two streams in Scarborough that are currently on the list. Portions of Phillips Brook and Red Brook are on it, but not in its entirety. And so this would add those streams into our 75-foot setback stream protection overlay. And so the map would change. We did send this out to everyone in town that would be affected. This one we did not receive a lot of public impact input, only a couple of calls and questions. There's a specific set of standards and requirements of what you can and cannot do in the stream protection overlay. It's pretty straightforward in our ordinance. The planning board did hear the public hearing and reviewed this request, and they unanimously recommended moving it forward as presented. In your packet, there is the map exhibits of what would be changed on our shoreland zoning map for both areas of town. And then the actual red lines of the zoning district, again, just adds reference to this Maine DEP water report. And then if a new stream is put on that list, we could amend the map to coincide with that in the future as well. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Autumn. Is there anyone wishing to make public comment on this
Can I ask
item?
a question,
No,
please?
you can ask a question during council discussion. Yes, you may ask your question.
I'm just curious, and this might be for Angela. Why is it 75 feet, and is 75 feet enough? Or should it be more, since both of these are urban impaired streams?
So, there are certain thresholds or standards that start with the state, and so 75 is one of those standard kind of setbacks. What we are trying to do, sorry, I have something in my mouth, I've just realized that. It's actually part of our federal stormwater permit, is to expand our stream protection areas to include our urban impaired streams. And so that is trying to get what is currently not captured into that realm of that typical 75 feet that the state really looks at other streams at. We want to make sure we're covering it for our urban impaired streams as well, if that makes sense. I will say Stream Protection 2 has a 250-foot setback. That was something that was done on the Nonsuch River, and that predates me, and I don't have a lot of history on how that came to be, other than it was a very big push in Scarborough, obviously, to provide that. So as it is right now, we have no protection in some of these areas, so we're trying to get at least to how the state protects other streams. And then that's where the 75 is really that kind of base threshold, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Other council questions, since we have our senior staff. Scott?
Is there any developers that have proposals they have that it's going to affect?
We have, as Autumn said, we actually did mailings directly to all of the abutters of Phillips Brook and Red Brook that would be impacted. And as she said, we had a few, maybe one developer that's already in the watershed. And I think I got one from a resident, just asking to clarify, okay, if I do this, does that work or not? There's the table that allows them to do certain things. So it wasn't a problem. And then at planning board, I don't believe we had any public comment. There was no public comment.
Okay.
And that's where the notices went out to show them that they had the opportunity at planning board to come and speak.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. think you're good. At this point, I will open it up for public comment.
Hi, Stanis Moody Roberts, 38 County Road. So just commend the efforts that the town's done to put this proposal together. I live right on Red Brook, so I'm one of the butters that this would be referring to. And to give you some background about Red Brook, Red Brook's almost completely aquifer fed, which means that it's several degrees colder than most of the rest of the rivers and streams in our region. And that's really important for the ecosystem in that stream, which includes brook trout. But it also makes it that much more susceptible to runoff. So any development, any clearing of any impervious surface, any clearing of the land within that watershed puts more runoff into the stream, which affects runoff directly into the stream, which affects its temperature more than it does streams that are primarily fed by runoff. So it's particularly important with Red Brook that we have a additional setback. And to John's point, I don't know that 75 feet is enough, but it's definitely for tonight enough. So I encourage everyone to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to make public comment?
I guess I will. I happen to be.
Mr. Town Manager.
This is public comment.
Can you please state your address for the record?
12 Saratoga Lane. I have a portion of Phillips Brook that does run through, I guess one of the tributaries runs through my front yard. I would be concerned if it was more than 75 because I think the front of my structure is probably very close to 75. So anything further would cause concern for me, just what I could or couldn't do with my primary residence.
We're just now hearing about.
Thank you, sir.
No, I'm just responding to the suggestion that more could be better. Thank you.
At this point, I will close public comment. Do I have a motion?
Second, our motion, so moved. Here we go.
Second.
Council discussion. Councilor Anderson.
I would like to motion to amend this so that it is 100 feet in front of Tom's house.
Do not second. I'm sorry.
My motion.
I'm sorry, your motion failed to garner a second. Is there any actual council discussion on this? I will just say, you know, to our public commenters' point, no protections seems ludicrous to me. And so some protections, let's start here and see what the impacts are. And hopefully the public will support this decision, but I think that this is something that is probably long overdue. With that, I will call the vote. All those in favor? Show that as unanimous. Thank you. Order number 25-049 is act on the request to sign the warrants for the regular school budget validation referendum election, the Board of Education municipal election, and the special municipal election for town council, scheduled for Tuesday, June 10th, 2025 at Scarborough High School, Alumni Gym. Appoint the warden and warden clerk, set the hours for voter registration, and act on appointments of election clerks pursuant to Chapter 200, Article 8, Nominations and Elections, Title 21-A 503, and authorize the town clerk to make any additional appointments as necessary. Town Clerk's Office.
States already in the order, but essentially the purpose is for the June 10th election. We have the regular municipal election for Board of Education, the school budget validation referendum, and the special municipal election to fill the vacancy created by the resignation of Councilor Cushing with a term to expire in November of 2026.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone wishing to make public comment? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Council discussion? Yes.
Just
Counselor
briefly,
Fellows.
I have long thought and have said publicly, well before joining the council, that I've always been a little uncomfortable with the way that we validate budgets and single out the schools. I think it's one of many examples of, it's an imperfect system, but we live with it. And it's absolutely important to give the voters a voice. But in my experience, just in my observation has been that the school budget vote often becomes an avatar for the budget more broadly and people's frustrations with taxes more broadly. I certainly hope that people will come out and support the schools. And I think these are responsible budgets in both cases. But I just sort of had to voice that. Thank you.
Certainly, thank you. Any other council comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? Show that as unanimous. Thank you. Just got our new business in before 10. Item 9 is non-action items. We have no non-action items this evening. Item 11 is council member comments. Anyone wishing to make final remarks? Yes, Councilor Anderson.
Yeah, so, couple things. One, tonight, again, we heard a lot of great speakers come. And I think, I just want to echo what Councilor Scyther said, that I think is something that I think we all believe and feel, which is we all do this because we love our community and want to see our community get better. Now we may have different views on like what that looks like or how to get there, but I'm very happy to serve with this group that is, I think, a pretty diverse group for the most part, that does have different perspectives. And I appreciate how we can debate respectfully with each other and ultimately get to a decision that hopefully we all accept once we vote, move on and take on the next thing. I have really appreciated Councilor Cushing being on the council. I know this is your last meeting. I appreciate you always challenging, ways of thinking to just really make sure that we're being broad in our perspective. And so I'm going to miss having you here. And I appreciate everything you've done on Finance Committee, Communications Committee, to really try and advance what I think was your priority when you ran, which was to try and improve communications, which is very difficult and something that we need to continue to focus on, especially with the loss of the leader. So I hope you continue to stay engaged and involved, and I hope we continue to hear from you as we're deliberating things in the future. And I just want to thank you for stepping up and for your service, and anyone else who fills your shoes, I hope, comes in with the energy that you brought in the short period that you were here. So thank you.
Yeah, Councilor Fellows.
Thank you. I also want to thank Councilor Cushing for stepping up and for his service and for his perspective. And what I anticipate will be his continued engagement at whatever levels. And maybe we'll see him up there with the green light at some point.
Red light.
Please use that when he's up.
Yes. But to echo what John said, we had very robust public outreach on our big ticket item tonight. And I was struck as I was reading all the emails and listening to the speakers, it's sort of that, I'll give at least a version of one of the Yogi Berra saying, which is that, it's nobody goes there anymore. It's too crowded. And I think a version of that for Scarborough would be, things have gotten so bad here that everybody wants to live here. And that's really what a lot of it boils down to for me. And there are a lot of, when you really strip it away, a lot of the challenges we have are good problems to have. And that's not to trivialize anyone's valid concerns about taxes or traffic or safety or growth or any of that. There are a lot of places within Maine and elsewhere around the country that will gladly trade places with us to have the school enrollment that we have, to have the growth that we have, to have the quality of life that we have. And really, in relative terms, the affordability that we have. And again, that's not to question anyone's valid concerns, but I hope we can continue to approach these things from hopefully a position of strength and in a positive way. Thanks.
Thank you. Other council comments? Yeah, Scott, go ahead.
Yeah, I also would like to, I enjoyed it very much being with Don and debating and going back and forth. And he told me at the beginning, he says, you may be surprised how much we agree on things, you know, because he and I are the opposites, but it's kind of an odd situation,
You're
but
the odd
I
couple.
really have enjoyed it. And I think he's a high-class person. And I think he worked hard and he really tried to make the town better. There's no doubt. And I want to thank you very much.
Go ahead, Karen.
Thank you, Dawn. We're gonna miss you on finance. I just want to thank you for stepping up. I think the comment you made actually at finance was because someone said to you, no one wants to do this, why are you doing this? And it's not an easy job, and I can see why you don't want to do it. But here we are, being fools, continuing to do it, but I appreciate you giving your time, because I think if anyone knows how much time and effort it takes to be a town councilor, it's us. And so we appreciate you doing what you did. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I will just say that in this job, it is hard to always call it like you see it. And I find myself tempering my inner voice sometimes to be, maybe a little softer. And that's not always necessary, and it's not always good. And sometimes I go home and I wish I hadn't done it. And so one of the things that I really admire about you, Counselor Cushing, is that you call it like you see it. And I think that the residents really appreciated that about you too. And I know that you will be missed by many of our regulars and frequent flyers because you have become a voice for some people that don't always feel like they are being heard. And so thank you for your service.
First of all, thank all of you. Believe it or not, it actually has been a pleasure. And I've learned a number of things myself about the difficulty of this task for everybody, how much time it takes to do and so forth. And, candidly, for me, it's not the work or the length of the meetings or the inability to get a drink and a sandwich when I go home or any of those things. I think that the truth of the matter is that I've made my point, and that I think to the person you've all at some point said, we value your perspective. Well, one of the things I want to assure you is that my perspective will always be available to you at the same price. Okay. And because I think that I said before that this town is, it feels to me like in an adolescence, and that as we look at where our world is going, it pains me to say this, but it is the millennials, most of you, who are going to bail us out of the larger mess that we find ourselves in today. And what that means is that it's the younger folks' sensibilities, hopefully with some temper, that need to shape this community going forward. And that if I have left you with, I guess, the thoughts that it is your time, but there are others coming and going who need to be included in that conversation. And I think the last fundamental thing is that, people have characterized me as a business guy. Now, I've been a business guy for about the last 5 years, where I actually have my own skin in the game. What I've been is a healthcare executive, which isn't exactly a hard-nosed business thing. But the people who risk capital, who go out into this marketplace to create jobs, to provide services, to provide the multiple pizza places. I got a pizza at the new place. I noticed that they had nice chairs where you could wait. Shout out to the next. But those are people who are investing in improving the quality of our lives. We wouldn't be able to have a discussion about affordable housing if we didn't have somebody who's willing to take some risk and build it. And I have a fear that those folks, if the pendulum swings too far towards environmentalism, towards, conservation, towards no growth, et cetera, that we will come to a point where people will not want to invest in this community. And that would be as dangerous as just letting growth go out. And so I just want to leave you with that message and that perspective, because I think that there is a danger that that voice gets buried. And as I said before, I love working with all of you. I'm happy to pick up the phone. I didn't intend to make a speech tonight, but I can never resist the opportunity to give documentary. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. With that, I will go ahead and ask for a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
All those in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your evening.